Chapter 1701. Luocio had seen similar skeletons of these giant beasts before. At that time, Su Zijuan led the way in order to take away the evil soul sealed in an evil spirit in the Xianyuan Palace. Since a long time ago, the Xianyuan Palace guarded the land of Kelowna. While keeping the internal peace, it also fought against the external dangers. Most of the external dangers came from the demons in the sea. Can you tell how these deep-sea giant beasts died? Boss Luo asked at this time. Miss Maid began to check the structure of the rock wall and some exposed giant beast skeletons. Miss Maid said, "There are many possibilities of formation, but there is no way to determine the cause of death of these giant beasts. But this crack seems to be formed in an instant." "Tell me about it." Luocio thought for a while and said. Miss Maid said, "It seems to be the release of some kind of power that broke the seabed in an instant and formed this crack. Master, look, the incisions in these places are flat. And the deeper you go, the narrower the gap." Boss Luo nodded and reached out to touch the nearest giant beast skeleton, but found nothing. The souls of these giant beasts had already dissipated, leaving nothing behind. These skeletons were at most fossils of a larger body. But the deeper they went, the more dense the giant beast skeletons on the rock wall. Later, the entire rock wall had actually become a pile of giant beast skeletons. Maybe something attracted them and then killed them all at once. Miss Maid made a new inference at this time. But no matter what the reason was, Luocio had already seen Kong Hai at the end of this crack passage. Kong Hai stood alone in front of a huge stone door with relief carvings at the end of the corridor. The two stone doors with relief carvings were at least 100 meters tall. Most of the reliefs above the door were in the shape of giant beasts, and they were also quite dense. I heard that this trench was originally a mine in the undersea city. So, this huge stone door was also built by the workers who opened the mine at that time? Boss Luo came in front of Kong Hai and asked curiously. "I don't know." Kong Hai shook his head at this time and moved again. He walked in front of the huge stone relief door and whispered, "I seem to have walked out from inside." "Seem?" Kong Hai thought for a while and said, "I don't have the memory of the past. At the beginning of my memory, I had already met Professor Kim Kailuan. After those days, I was walking aimlessly in the dark. I didn't know where I came from or where I was going. The professor met me at that time, then he took me in and I stayed with him. That's my story." "But you remember it now?" Boss Luo thought for a while. Kong Hai said, "Only after coming here did some fragments appear in my mind. I vaguely remember that I've seen this carved stone door before." As he spoke, Kong Hai placed his hand on the relief stone door. However, the relief stone door did not change at all due to Kong Hai's touch. It just stood there, motionless. Kong Hai frowned, then waved his hand to wipe away the mud and deep-sea microorganisms on the stone relief door. Many subtle patterns gradually became clear because of Kong Hai's cleaning. Luocio saw some patterns on the door. His heart moved as if he remembered something. While pondering, he waved his hand and wiped it away. The mud and dirt on the 100-meter-tall stone door with relief sculptures began to peel off. The stone door finally returned to its original appearance. Kong Hai looked at Luocio's method in surprise, but he was more concerned about the stone door after it returned to its original appearance. At this time, Kong Hai looked up and saw a strange ring mark in the middle of the huge stone relief door. He bounced his legs slightly, and with the help of the buoyancy, his body easily climbed to the middle of the stone door. "I've never seen such a symbol before." He had seen the appearance of the huge ring mark on the stone door clearly. This seems to be a mark that doesn't belong to the underwater city. But Luocio had seen this ring mark in the Penglai treasure house. To be exact, he had seen it in the courtyard in the spiritual world left by the frozen Penglai immortal Cicero in the Penglai treasure house. The Penglai treasure house was a place created to imitate a shop, but the foundation of its ability to respond to wishes came from the all-elements that could construct everything, not the power of an altar. At this time, if one looked carefully, one could find that there were 2 palm-sized dents on this huge mark. The 3 people noticed the existence of this dent at the same time. Kong Hai thought for a while and said, "It seems that to open this stone door, we need some kind of key, and there are 2 of them. From the looks of it, it looks like 2 square things." Miss Maid looked at it twice. Before that, she had also reached out and pressed on the door. And something that surprised Miss Maid happened. That was, with her current strength, she couldn't open this stone door. Of course, this was purely an attempt at pushing. As for attacking or destroying, she didn't have time to try, so the result was unknown. It seems that in the current situation, we can't open it for the time being. Kong Hai shook his head. Boss Luo suddenly smiled and said, "That's not necessarily the case. Maybe as long as we wait here for a while, there will be a turn for the better." Kong Hai looked at Luochio in confusion, thought for a while and said, "Did you find something?" Boss Luo said casually, "If you are interested in the things behind this stone door, you can also wait here." "Okay." Kong Hai nodded decisively. Boss Luo once again looked at the mark on the door. His memory was not wrong. This mark did come from the courtyard in Cicero's spiritual world. He said that the courtyard was a place he built in the past, a place that belonged to a world that had been destroyed. This mark seemed to be the mark of Cicero as a noble of the Eternal Empire. It was a symbol of his identity. This stone door was probably Cicero's legacy. In Kong Hai's memories, he had walked out from this stone door. Did that mean that Kong Hai had some information about the everlasting empire? Boss Luo narrowed his eyes. In his black and white vision, he instantly saw Kong Hai's soul clearly, except that it was a little brighter. There was nothing special for the time being. "Master, I haven't seen these giant beasts before," Miss Maid suddenly said. "Can I collect some of them as specimens and study them carefully after I go back?" "Do as you please." Boss Luo directly agreed. Kong Hai seemed to be very interested in excavating the bones of these giant beasts. At this time, he also asked to join, to which Miss Maid didn't object. Luochio continued to look at the mark on the door, thinking about something. Actually, there was still a way. Information about the altar. However, Luochio didn't intend to get information about the Eternal Empire from the altar. He didn't know why. This should be a subconscious action that made him avoid this direction. It was just like how a person's vision could actually see their own nose, but they had always ignored the part where they could see their own nose. It was completely a subconscious behavior. Luochio slowly closed his eyes. If he could only wait here, then he would temporarily focus on the other 2 selves. Strictly speaking, they weren't clones, but the projection of his mind. Krakow Dorkin felt a constant pressure on his chest. At the same time, his mouth was blocked from time to time, and then a large amount of air was injected into his mouth. He suddenly opened his eyes and met another pair of eyes in an instant. The touch on his lips made Krakow Duogene instantly understand what he was going through. He pushed Riaz away, then reached out his hand to cover his mouth, a gush of hot air rising. His ears couldn't help but redden. You, what are you doing?" Krakow Dorkin's voice slightly changed, trembling. "Riaz? Listen, I've always treated you as a classmate, at most half a friend. You're a tool. Do you know what a tool is? I don't want to develop any strange relationship." "Oh, you're back to normal." Riaz was overjoyed. "It seems that beating you up really worked." "Beating me up?" Krakow Dorkin frowned, then looked around, his expression slightly changed. "Where is this place? Why am I here?" It was dark all around like a cave, and beside it was an empty pool. On the walls of the cave there were oars emitting a little bit of blue light. "Don't you remember?" Krakow Dorkin thought for a while. Remember what?" "I remember, after the competition, I went to the Imperial Palace to find His Majesty. Then? Krakow Dorkin suddenly looked at Riaz, saying in surprise, "I don't remember what happened after that." "Just like the residents of the underwater city after the competition that day," Riaz murmured, thinking that this was probably the Emperor's arrangement. He didn't know the purpose of Louis XX's arrangement, but because of Krakow Dorkin, he had a lot more resistance to the Emperor. "This is the Somna Trench," Riaz said slowly. "I came out this time to practice the Flying Serpent with Louis XXXIX. As for why you're here, I don't know. But you attacked me as soon as you appeared, and I haven't settled the score with you yet." "Emperor, I attacked you?" Krakow Dorkin was confused, looking at Riaz with question marks all over his face. "Do you think I'm a 3-year-old kid? If this is the Somna Trench, how can we breathe?" Riaz said, "This is a hollow area among the rocks in the trench. Do you see this pool? It's the trench outside. This place should have had air before, probably before the sunken sea era." Krakow Dorkin shook his head, feeling a little dizzy. He sighed and said, "I'm still confused. But let's not think too much, let's leave this damn place first." Krakow Dorkin was about to jump into the pool to leave, but Riaz quickly stopped him. "Wait, the energy of the shield has been used up long ago," Riaz quickly said. "With the resistance of the Flying Serpent, you'll be crushed into meat paste if you go out. Then what should we do?" I released a distress signal. Riaz thought for a while and said, "Now we can only wait for help, but I don't know how long it will take. But this place seems to be much bigger than we thought. Maybe we can look around. There is air here, and the humidity is enough. Maybe we can find food. Anyway, we are in trouble now, we must quickly replenish our strength." Krakow Dorkin subconsciously looked at Riaz and frowned. "Riaz, you seem to be more reliable than before. You used to be impatient, but now you are quite calm, like an adult." Riaz responded as if nothing had happened, but he still had the proud look of a young man. "You really don't know how I came to this place?" Krakow Dorkin immediately asked. "Wait, why did His Majesty invite you here for the Flying Serpent training? I don't believe it." Unexpectedly, Riaz suddenly rushed in front of Krakow Dorkin, pressed him against the wall, and covered his mouth. You, what do you want to do?" Krakow Dorkin was shocked, and his voice came out from Riaz's hand. He trembled. "I'm not that kind of person. Same sex is illegal, did you forget?" "Shoo, don't be noisy," Riaz whispered. "There seems to be some sound." Sound? Krakow Dorkin was startled and said subconsciously, "There is no sound." "No, there seems to be some sound." Both of them held their breath at the same time. "It seems to be singing?" Krakow Dorkin asked tentatively. "Is it singing?" Riaz nodded, then looked in the direction of the sound. It was definitely some kind of melody, but Riaz had never heard of it before. Gentle, sad, and beautiful. The sadness contained in the song seeped into Riaz's heart little by little, and he could not help but walk toward the place where the song came from. Krakow Dorkin seemed to be possessed at this time. As the song gradually became clearer, he followed Riaz and slowly walked into the depths of this huge cave with air. As the two of them entered, the song became clearer. After a while, Riaz and Krakow Dorkin came to an open space. The humidity was higher, and because of the large number of luminous crystals, this place became very bright. The singing voice came from the edge of the other pool. The two of them only saw a beautiful figure sitting at the edge of the pool, with long hair. She seemed to be naked. Chapter 1702. It was a voice that could mesmerize people. In Riaz's short life, he had never heard such a beautiful voice before. It was as if it was soothing his soul all the time, causing him to gradually lose himself in a happy mood. Riaz believed that Krypton King beside him thought so too. As they got closer, the perfect back was right in front of Riaz and Krypton King, within reach. Krypton King even subconsciously reached out his hand, wanting to touch the beautiful back. There was a primitive impulse hidden in his body. At this time, Krypton King's breathing gradually quickened, but his eyes were full of obsession. Riaz suddenly shuddered and woke up. He even instinctively felt danger, so he waved his hand and slapped away Krypton King's outstretched arm. With a lot of force, Krypton King cried out in pain. He held his arm and looked at Riaz rather angrily, but his infatuated eyes gradually became clear. At this moment, the mysterious woman sitting at the edge of the pool suddenly jumped into the pool. Only now did Riaz notice that the lower part of this beautiful woman's body was actually a fishtail. Sea monster tribe. Krypton King could not help but exclaim. Riaz also became nervous at this time. He remembered the words of the Emperor. Logically speaking, this place should have been cleared by the Third Army of Underwater City. How could there still be a sea monster? Riaz took a deep breath and instantly took out a refined magic energy gun from his boot. During this time, other than the daily beating, the girl Ryuj had indeed taught Riaz a lot of things, especially the use of weapons. For example, this magic energy gun, named Fire Kiran, was given to him by the girl Ryuj. At this time, Fire Kiran pointed at the female sea monster in the pool. Riaz was even more vigilant and asked, "Who are you? Why did you deliberately lure us here?" As he said that, Riaz directly fired a shot. The magic energy bullet did not directly hit the sea monster, who looked like a half-merman, but it still hit the pool, creating a water column that soared into the sky. The rippling water made the female sea monster's body shake. Her face suddenly turned pale as if she was frightened. I didn't. Really. I didn't. Don't kill me," the female sea demon hurriedly said. Her voice actually carried traces of sobbing. But Krypton Duo Gene didn't believe it. He snorted coldly and said with slight anger, "Your sea monster clan has always wanted to capture our undersea city. Every year, who knows how many people from Underwater City are captured by you? How can we believe your words?" I'm not from the Sea Demon clan," the half-mermaid said slowly. "I'm really not. I'm just too hungry. I have no choice. I just want to eat something. I don't want to hurt you." "Nonsense, you look like this. How can you not be from the Sea Monster clan?" Core Duo Gene shook his head. "Really? I am not. I am a siren," she said eagerly. Sisters. 3 of them, fleeing for their lives. Here we are separated. We don't know the way. Siren? Krypton Duo Gene and Riaz looked at each other. Obviously, they had never heard of what a siren was. Moreover, in their knowledge, this half-mermaid was clearly from the Sea Monster clan. "Be careful, this sea monster may still want to confuse us," Krypton Duo Gene whispered in Riaz's ear. "I heard from my father that there is a kind of sea monster called merman. They are half-mermaids. Their favorite thing is to capture adult males and then bring them to small caves to give birth to offspring." Give birth to offspring? Riaz was shocked. They were still young, and the early education in Undersea City was very pure. They only knew that giving birth to offspring was a major taboo before adulthood. Just hearing about it would make people blush. "We can't let her capture us to her small cave to give birth to offspring," Krypton Duo Gene said nervously. Riaz took a deep breath and nodded solemnly. He couldn't help but tighten his grip on the Fire Kiran. "Then, how should we deal with this sea monster? Siren?" Krypton Duo Gene was at a loss. He subconsciously opened his mouth, but he couldn't say anything. Whether it was him or Riaz, both of them had never encountered such a situation before. Riaz had never been in a situation where he had the life and death of a sea monster clan in his hands. Moreover, the siren looked so scared. In short, he was actually panicking. Krypton Duo Gene was also panicking. "Maybe we should bring her back and hand her over to the kingdom's government?" Krypton Duo Gene gritted his teeth and suggested, "Maybe we can get a Good Citizen award. We can't take care of ourselves now." Riaz couldn't help but smile bitterly. He didn't know if it was because the siren's charm on them had not dissipated, but when Riaz looked into her eyes, he had a feeling that he wanted to let her go. He had never encountered such a gaze before. Helpless, pitiful. It made him want to do something from the bottom of his heart. Riaz couldn't tell why. He only felt that his heart was filled with panic. Why don't we let her go? Riaz muttered to himself. Krypton duo Jean looked like he was about to explode. He grabbed Riaz's clothes and hurriedly said, Riaz? You can't be charmed just because she's beautiful. Look at me, look into my eyes. Wake up. She's a sea monster. She'll definitely hurt you. Only I will be good to you. Because she's beautiful? Not necessarily. Riaz didn't agree. This siren did look beautiful, but from his point of view, this siren was obviously not as beautiful as that big sister. Even that violent girl, Lyoga, was not as beautiful as her. Then, let's take her back. Riaz thought about it. From a rational point of view, Krypton duo Jean was not a bad idea. Handing her over to the Underwater City's kingdom's government was indeed the best way for a resident of Underwater City. Thus, Krypton duo Jean mustered up his courage and walked to the edge of the pool. He loudly said to the siren in the pool, Can you come up now? We won't harm you, but you have to listen to us. Understand? The siren hesitated for a moment, but in the end she slowly nodded. Okay. Come up here now. Krypton duo Jean quickly said, Slow down. The siren had to slowly swim to the edge of the pool and finally came to the feet of the two. She looked more panicked. Looking at Riaz with a weapon in his hand, she felt more fearful. Among the three sisters, she was the youngest and hadn't really reached adulthood. She was very weak. Her weapon was only her charming voice. But this young man with a gun was not affected by her voice. Now, climb up. Krypton duo Jean continued to command. Hearing this, the siren had to press her hands on the edge of the pool and climb out of the pool bit by bit. Gradually, Riaz saw the lower half of the siren's body clearly. It was indeed like a fish. The fin at the tail was even larger. However, when the siren completely climbed up, a soft blue light flashed, and her tail miraculously turned into a pair of slender legs. She put her legs on the ground and relied on her hands to support her upper body. Her thick long hair covered most of her body. Krypton duo Jean looked at her with a heavy breath and felt his heart palpitating. He secretly thought that this siren was very powerful. This must be a mermaid siren. According to his father, she liked to capture men and bring them back to the small cave to give birth. He didn't even dare to look at her eyes. Are you injured? Riaz frowned at this moment. There was a trace of red on the inside of the siren's calf. Blood slowly flowed out. The wound split open again. Little siren nodded. Injured before. Krypton duo Jean, she may not be a siren. Riaz suddenly said at this moment. What? Krypton duo Jean was stunned. Her blood is red. Siren's blood is green. Didn't I learn it when I first learned it? As Riaz spoke, he opened the zipper of the flying tumbler, a protective suit, took off the jacket, and then put it on the little siren. After that, he took off the backpack on his body. This thing was taken out from Asla. Basically, a regular, flying tumbler would have this kind of thing. It was a first aid kit to allow the pilot to heal in time after being injured in the wild. What do you want to do? You want to heal this siren? Krypton duo Jean slapped his forehead, widened his eyes and said in disbelief, Did you hit your head? Or did you get charmed by this siren's beauty? Shut up. Riaz turned around and glared at Krypton duo Jean. Krypton duo Jean was stunned by this glare. The words that he wanted to spit out were stuck in his throat. He felt wronged, but he was also faintly shocked by Riaz's glare at this moment. Stern, unquestionable, fierce. She means no harm. Riaz lowered his head while holding the little siren's calf and began to treat the wound. I can feel that she is very scared now. She is overwhelmed and frightened. What she needs is our help. Krypton duo Jean. Krypton duo Jean swallowed his saliva and looked at the little siren's eyes again unwillingly. Then, he looked away in a panic and muttered, You obviously think she is beautiful. Come here. Help me. Riaz snorted coldly. Krypton duo Jean walked over reluctantly. Riaz sighed secretly. He didn't know why, but he seemed to get along with Krypton Duo Gene since he was young. Whenever he talked to Krypton Duo Gene always liked to oppose him. Only when he was angry, Krypton Duo Gene would become obedient. With the help of Krypton Duo Gene, it was much easier to treat the wound. This guy's hands and feet were quite delicate. Your wound doesn't look deep. It should be fine soon. I will disinfect you now. If it hurts, you can tell me. I will try to be gentle. Riaz looked at the little siren's eyes, then remembered the knowledge he learned in the nursing class, and suddenly asked, "My name is Riaz, what is your name?" "Helen." While talking, Riaz poured the disinfectant directly on the little siren's calf. At this time, Riaz's eyes were sharp and his hands were quick. He immediately applied the hemostatic patch on the wound. Riaz looked at Helen's eyes at this time, but his palms were still on the hemostatic patch on her wound. The temperature of his palms slowly soothed the pain of the wound. He smiled again, loosened his palms a little, and then gently stroked. "It doesn't hurt, it doesn't hurt. The pain has flown away. Well, I don't know if it works. When I was young, my mother always comforted me like this when I was injured and bandaged." Thank you." Helen looked at the young man's eyes with shining eyes. The heat from his palms was something she had never felt before in the cold sea. It was as if it could melt her body and drain all the energy from her body. She even had the impulse to fall into the young man's arms and tell him about the helplessness and hesitation these days. But she tried hard to restrain herself. This was something her sisters had warned her about. Helen quickly lowered her head, not daring to look at Riaz's eyes. "Well, it should be fine now." Riaz clapped his hands and stood up. He glanced at Credo Gold, thought for a while, and threw the first aid kit to Credo Gold's hand. Then, he squatted down with his back facing Helen. "Come, it should be inconvenient for you to walk. Let me carry you." Credo Gold's eyes widened, thinking, "You bastard, you didn't even carry me before." After a moment of hesitation, Helen silently climbed onto Riaz's back. The soft sensation coming from his back gave Riaz a rather strange feeling, and his heart seemed to have sped up a bit. But it was quite comfortable. As for the smoothness of his palms when he hugged Helen's legs, he enjoyed it very much. "Helen, you have sisters, right?" Riaz had to divert his attention. "How did you come here? How did you get separated?" "We escaped. Used to live by the sea," Helen said slowly. "We swam here and met many creatures that could talk. They called themselves the Siren Clan. They wanted to catch us. My sisters and I kept running, and we escaped to this place. Later on, we encountered a terrifying monster in this place. It was huge, and my sisters lured it away in order to save me. I stayed here and didn't dare to go out, waiting for them to come back, but they never came back." "Huge monster?" Riaz couldn't help but frown, asking subconsciously, "How big was it?" "Very big. Very big." Helen released her hands from Riaz's neck and gestured. As she gestured, her chest bumped against Riaz's back from time to time, making Riaz's mouth dry. He swallowed subconsciously and said in his mind, "It is indeed very big, very big." ######PS. Next update will be later, around 3 p.m. Chapter 1703. Along the way they did not talk much. After Helen, the little siren, briefly explained her origin, Riaz found that there was nothing more to talk about. Helen came from the sea, a place close to the human world. The three sisters were captured by the nearby Siren Clan when they fled. Through the Siren Clan, they learned some common language of the Siren Clan and Heidi City. In fact, the Siren Clan and Heidi City did use the same language because the ancestors of the two clans originated from Lemuria. As for the huge monster, according to Helen's description, it seemed to be a super-large squid. Then there was no more then. "Riaz, what's wrong with you? Are you hot?" Krypton Dorkin walked up and handed him a handkerchief, a personal one. I'm not hot." Riaz squeezed out a voice. Krypton Dorkin looked at him in confusion and then asked, Are you too tired? Let me take over from you. You've been carrying a siren all the way. It's too exhausting. No need. Riaz shook his head. Besides, she's not from the siren clan. Riaz walked away quickly. But he felt that his pace was faster and his pants were tighter. He didn't know why, but he felt like he was congested. But such a thing had never happened before. He only felt as if he was always thinking about Helen, who was clinging to him on his back. Core Duo Jean had no choice but to use the illumination device to explore the scene around the cave. The light was a huge circle, and at this time, it swept through the complicated stone pillars, stalagmites, and rock passages. Suddenly, the bright circle came to a place and stopped. Krypton Dorkin seemed to have found something. Riaz. I think I found a person, Krypton Dorkin suddenly whispered. Riaz was shocked and looked over. There was indeed a person. They saw a person wearing a white robe with a long white cloth covering his face. At the same time, he wore a grayish-white hat, revealing only his eyes. At this moment, he was sitting cross-legged on the ground. What made Riaz and the others feel even more strange was that there was a large white cloth spread out on the ground where this mysterious masked person in white robe was sitting. There were many things placed on the white cloth. This made Riaz think of the flea market in Underwater City. The appearance of those people selling old goods. Riaz and Krypton Duo Jean looked at each other and quickly understood each other's meaning. Krypton Gold. This is too weird. It might be dangerous. Don't go near it. Riaz, let's go and take a look. Maybe we can find out something. Rich Guy. Don't go, Riaz. Are you going or not? Rich Guy, all right, Shao, be careful. Helen, who was behind him, suddenly hugged Riaz a little tighter and whispered something into his ears. A ticklish feeling filled his ears, all the way to his heart. He suddenly felt that Helen's voice was even better than when she sang. The young men and young women quickly arrived in front of this strangely dressed person. Who are you? Why are you here? Krypton Duo Jean had already picked up a suitable spindle-shaped stone. He raised it and stared at the person. The man in the white cloth raised his head slightly at this time. His voice seemed to have a trace of a smile, which made people feel very comfortable. I'm a traveling merchant who walks on the seabed. I'm committed to providing help to people who are in trouble. Traveling merchant? Riaz and the others were stunned. Krypton Duo Jean quickly reacted and returned to Riaz's side. He whispered, "This guy speaks the Underwater City language without an accent. Could he be one of those scavengers who sneak out of the city from time to time?" Riaz shook his head in confusion, indicating that he couldn't be sure. He even looked at this guy who claimed to be a traveling merchant with even more confusion. He felt that he had seen him somewhere before. For this reason, Riaz even activated his special ability to smell, but he couldn't detect anything from the other party's smell. "Take a look at my goods. Maybe you'll like them." The masked traveling merchant slightly opened his hands at this time with a passionate look. "You're the first batch of customers today. You can get a 20% discount." A 20% discount? Krypton Duo Jean frowned. As the son of a rich merchant in the Underwater City, he always bought the best and most expensive things. A 20% discount was equivalent to looking down on his identity. Krypton Duo Jean glanced at Riaz, thinking that it was time to let Riaz feel the power of wealth. It was time to wake Riaz up from the beauty. He squatted in front of the masked traveling merchant, grabbed a small item from the ground, and said with a chuckle, "Let alone a 20% discount, if this thing is really useful to us now, it's not a problem to give you double the price. I, Krypton Duo Jean, have plenty of contribution points." "You can't use contribution points to trade here," the masked traveling merchant said casually. "In my place, it's the barter rule. You can only use your things to trade for my things." "You don't want contribution points?" Krypton Duo Jean looked at the other party in disbelief, feeling that he had encountered a prehistoric creature. "Contribution points are useless to me. The masked traveling merchant smiled and said, "Don't worry, even if you don't have contribution points, you have things on you that you can trade." Krypton Duogene was stunned and subconsciously looked at himself. He suddenly put down the item in his hand, stepped back, and grabbed his collar. "I don't want it like this." The masked traveling merchant was silent for a moment before he turned to look at Riaz. As if he thought that the Krypton did not exist anymore, he smiled and said, "Young sir, do you have anything you like?" Riaz thought for a moment, then picked up a small crystal. "What is this?" The merchant said calmly, "This is a listening stone. As long as you hold it, you can hear the voices of most creatures in the deep sea." "Really?" Riaz was stunned. He felt a cooling sensation when he held the tiny crystal in his hand, and he subconsciously said, "I remember that Astral One developed the brainwave communicator a while back, but I wouldn't dare to describe it as most of them. Is your listening stone better than Astral One's research?" "You can give it a try," the merchant said generously. Riaz held the listening stone doubtfully, then began to communicate with Helen. However, this time, he let Helen speak in her original language. A miraculous scene occurred. He actually used the listening stone to communicate with Helen without any hindrance. He could understand the meaning of every sentence that Helen spoke in another language. Even Helen could understand his own meaning very well. It was not as simple as just listening. It could even provide feedback. Riaz couldn't help but like this listening stone from the bottom of his heart. He hesitated for a moment, then asked the stall owner in the deep sea, "I like this listening stone very much. It's just that I don't have many things on me, so I don't think there's anything that can compare to it. Don't you want to look at other things?" The masked traveling merchant suddenly asked. "Perhaps there's something better. For example, something that can help you get out of this place." Riaz's heart skipped a beat. He was indeed a little tempted, but he quickly shook his head. Getting out of this place was indeed what they needed right now, but in fact it was not an urgent need. When they were in trouble, Riaz had already sent out a signal, so he believed that someone would come to their rescue soon. It was only a matter of time before they escaped. However, he had never heard of this magical stone before. If he missed this chance, he didn't know if there would be another one. It can listen to the voice of all things. I wonder if it can also listen to Asla's voice? Riaz couldn't help but have a sudden idea. "If you don't have enough on you, I'll get some for you too." Krypton Gold walked over and unzipped the stone. Don't get me wrong, he was not taking off his clothes, he was just taking out the necklace on his neck. "This is..." Riaz opened his mouth in surprise. "This is your 10th birthday gift from your mother." "It's okay." Krypton Gold said indifferently, "It's not that precious. If this stone is really that magical, then it's worth it. But I have to say this, Riaz, you have to lend me this stone to play with in the future." Riaz opened his mouth. "This time I'll accept it." He thought so in his heart. "Oh, this necklace is indeed a good thing." The masked traveling merchant smiled, but then shook his head and said, however, "It's still not enough to exchange for this listening stone. It's far from enough." Riaz thought so too, so he thought for a while and said, "Sir, the listening stone is magical, it must be an incredible treasure. However, apart from this necklace, we really can't take out anything else. Here are some first aid medicines and..." He thought for a while and then released Fire Kiran. But the traveling merchant shook his head and said bluntly, "I'm sorry, these things are not valuable to me. Use this." At this time, Helen timidly spat out a small pearl from her mouth. "Can I add this? The siren's tear is also valuable." The traveling merchant shook his head again. "I'm sorry, it's still not enough." Krypton Gold suddenly said, "What's the point of selling things here? After we return to the underwater city, I can buy you whatever you want. Do you know the Krypton Gold Chamber of Commerce? It's mine. Actually, it's more interesting to sell things here." The traveling merchant smiled and said, "If it's something easily obtainable, it won't be so precious. Since you can't take out anything of equal value, I have no choice but to take back this listening stone. Perhaps you can look at other things. Riaz clenched his teeth and said, "This. Can we put it on credit first? You see, we're trapped here and can't find anything. But don't worry, after we return to the underwater city, I'll find a way to gather everything. I'll find some truly valuable things for you." "There should be a lot of treasures in the palace," the traveling merchant said. "The price now may not be high, but if you buy it later, the price may be very high. Once you make a promise, you have to keep it. You have to be responsible for your words. Customer, have you thought it through?" This made Riaz instantly recall his big brother's words. He couldn't help but open his mouth. But looking at the listening stone in his hand, he subconsciously looked at Helen's eyes. He saw that after Helen spat out that pearl, her face seemed to have paled a lot. Riaz gritted his teeth and put down the listening stone in his hand. He let out a long sigh, as if he had put down a heavy burden. "This listening stone, I don't want it anymore. Sorry, I can't ask Krypton Gold to hand over his necklace just because I want it. This is a birthday gift from his mother, and it's also a legacy. Although his family has a lot of wealth, this kind of thing can't be recovered if it's lost. I can't give Helen's pearl either. This thing may be very important to her." "Don't you think it's a pity?" the merchant said indifferently. "It's quite a pity." Riaz nodded. "If you miss it, you may never see it again. Listening to the voice of all things is indeed a very powerful ability, but I believe that Astral One in Underwater City will be able to research the same principle in the future. I can also teach Helen the language of Underwater City. After a long time, she will slowly learn it. More importantly, I won't regret my current willfulness in the future. It seems that my business today is not good," the merchant said with a slight trace of regret. "This place doesn't seem to be a good place to do business. Maybe I should move." The merchant took back the listening stone and then began to slowly wrap up the things on the ground. Krypton Gold looked at it with pity for a while. A stone that he casually picked up has the ability to listen to all things, then what about the other things in the bag? So angry. There are actually people who don't like contribution points. How can there be people who don't like contribution points? "Wait a minute, do you know how to leave this place?" Riaz quickly asked. "Are you familiar with this place? Can you take us out of here? Krypton Gold will repay you after we return. His family is really rich." Hearing this, Krypton Gold almost jumped up and beat this guy up. But the masked merchant didn't seem to hear this question. After packing up the bag, he took out something. "It seems that there isn't much business today. Recently, I seem to be buying things that are losing money. You don't want this, right?" Then, the merchant casually threw the thing in his hand on the ground. "Wait, mister? Mister?" Riaz tried to persuade him to stay. But the merchant had already walked away. Step by step, he seemed to be walking very slowly, but in the blink of an eye, he was already far away and then disappeared from sight. Krypton Gold picked up the thing on the ground. It was actually the text description of Underwater City. "What is this? Magical bean? Eating one can maintain one's physical strength for 3 days? TSK. This broken thing can fill the stomach?" Krypton Gold didn't believe it. He grabbed a handful and stuffed it directly into the mouth of the little Helen when Riaz wasn't paying attention. In an instant, Helen's body swelled. It was so swollen that it was uncomfortable. Krypton Gold. Along the way, the teenagers seemed to be carefree. The merchant slowly lifted the white cloth on his face and said with a smile, "I don't want to regret my willfulness now. I've grown up." At this time, in the dim cave, footsteps slowly came. The merchant turned around, and the figure gradually became clear in front of his eyes. The merchant smiled and stepped forward to greet, "Mr. Luaccio, so you are also here." "Yes, I don't know what happened, but I walked and I came to this place." Boss Luo too smiled slightly at this time. "I didn't expect to meet you here. Your Majesty. We are really fated to meet." The white-robed merchant. Louis XXXIX smiled slightly at this time. There is a good scenic spot nearby. Do you want to see it? In Underwater City, you probably can't see such scenery. Then, please lead the way, Your Majesty. Boss Luo too said expectantly. #######PS. 3980 seconds. Chapter 1704. Louis XXXIX began to take off his white robe and the hat on his head. The Emperor did not write anything about it, and Luocio did not ask. It was as if both sides were well aware of it, but they did not point it out tacitly. It was just that the journey was quiet, and there was always a need to find something to talk about. It was not lonely between people. This was the deep sea, an underwater world far beyond human imagination. Sunlight could not reach here, so darkness thrived and loneliness spread. Mr. Luo, do you know why the underwater city and the Siren tribe split? His Majesty suddenly turned around and asked. Luocio said casually, "It is said that the ancestors of the Siren tribe and the ancestors of the underwater city had differences of opinion. In order to obtain the power to live freely in the deep sea, the ancestors of the Siren tribe fell and became monsters." You heard this from Kim Kailuan, right? His Majesty smiled. Boss Luo said, "I saw it in a book, and there are also explanations on some other popular science channels. That is what the underwater city allows the people to see," His Majesty said indifferently. His Majesty said indifferently, including Kim Kailuan. In fact, his research results were not bad, but he was wrong from the beginning. Luocio smiled and said, "Your Majesty, are you going to tell me the truth? Remember the relief painting on the wall that you saw in the library last time?" His Majesty said suddenly. Luocio nodded. "It seems to be a war," Louis XXXIX said. "In fact, most of the history that Kim Kailuan researched is consistent. In the Lemurian era, because of the wrong direction of magic energy evolution, there was a devastating disaster. At that time, the Lemurians had no choice but to launch the sinking plan. But in fact, the sinking plan was not limited to the underwater city." Boss Luo listened with great interest. He liked the feeling of the truth of history being revealed bit by bit. "We built a total of 10 underwater cities," Louis XXXIX said slowly. Louis XXXIX slowly said, "The 10 underwater cities accommodated all the survivors of the catastrophe. And these 10 underwater cities were under the leadership of the last 2 princes of the Lemurian era. You know the 2 statues at the entrance of the underwater city, right? They are the last 2 princes? Not bad." Louis XXXIX nodded. "This is not recorded in any document. Only we, their descendants, know about this. In fact, apart from us, no one would have thought that the ancestors of the underwater city and the sea demon tribe were actually 2 brothers. After all, their appearances are too different." Boss Luo shook his head. "That was the difference between a human and a beast. My ancestor, Louis I, and the ancestor of the Siren tribe, Cassidy, were the last surviving princes of the Lemuria Empire. They had been working hard to restore the former civilization." Louis XXX's voice gradually lowered. There was indeed a disagreement between them, but it was not over whether to live in the deep sea or return to the land. Instead, it was over their attitude towards a certain power. "On the relief sculpture in the library, is it the thing that you are fighting against? Why don't you guess what this is?" His Majesty revealed a crafty look at this time. "What kind of power is it that caused the 2 princes to have different opinions and even accumulated so many generations of hatred? It seems to be related to the black ball in the competition field that day." Boss Luo too smiled and said, "After all, there is a similar black ball on the relief sculpture. It's not hard to make the connection. We call it the Eye of the Ocean Abyss. It can devour all the negative emotions of creatures and use them as food to strengthen itself. It can't be destroyed by any means that we know of." Louis XXXIX said self-deprecatingly, In fact, the Lemuria civilization that claimed to have reached the end of civilization actually didn't know anything. In the former world, there was still something unknown to the Lemuria civilization, and it was hidden in the deep sea. Is the underwater city the party that compromised with this power? Luaccio thought for a while and said. Louis XXXIX said, "Do you find it strange that the prosperous and peaceful underwater city was the party that compromised? Instead, the cruel and violent sea demon tribe was the party that resisted." Boss Luo didn't comment. His Majesty the Emperor sighed and said, "The eye of the ocean abyss is the food of that thing. Every once in a while, the underwater city needs to provide enough eye of the ocean abyss to survive under its control. You said that you can use 20 black balls to exchange for new technology. Unfortunately, each eye of the ocean abyss needs a lot of wars and many a flying demon contest to condense. It's just barely enough. 20, I really can't do anything." Luaccio didn't say anything. This price was set by the altar. Since it was set by the altar, it meant that Louis XXXIX must have enough things on him at that time, and it was something that he could give. "Your Majesty, my conditions are still the same." Luaccio shook his head. "However, this time, I'm afraid you can only remove one of these conditions." "I know." His Majesty the Emperor waved his hand and said, "I just want to find someone to talk to. The people of the underwater city can't. Riaz can, but not now. You are different. You don't belong to the underwater city. You have nothing to do with us. It doesn't matter even if you know. Most importantly, I don't think you are the kind of person who likes to spread other people's secret." Since the underwater city chose to compromise, and the siren race chose to resist, Boss Luo asked curiously, "According to your fear of it, why didn't it wipe out the siren race? The disaster caused by one time could indeed harvest a lot of eye of the ocean abyss. The 9 underwater cities were destroyed and disappeared because of this. But later, it found that the last underwater city was all the food it had. It began to think, and then it had the idea of captivity. However, one underwater city alone is not enough to feed it." His Majesty the Emperor said expressionlessly, "As I said, eye of the ocean abyss is something that swallows all the negative emotions to grow. How can negative emotions be easy to come by? Or, it is feeding the underwater city." A hint of self-deprecation flashed in Louis XX's eyes. "And I am feeding the siren race. Activities like the flying demon competition cannot be held too many times. Otherwise, the state of the people in the underwater city will be difficult to control. But the siren race is different. Their reproductive ability is very strong, and their population is far more than the underwater city. It can be said that they are inexhaustible. A batch was killed this year, and another batch will soon be added next year. There will be an endless stream," Boss Luo said, "but the underwater city I see is based on magic energy technology. I don't see any shadow of other external forces." "You said it is feeding the underwater city?" At this time, Louis XXXIX suddenly stood still and then slowly turned around. At this time, the Emperor who appeared in front of Luaccio was not the handsome appearance that the people of the underwater city knew. He was unusually ugly, and his face was constantly distorted and then combined into a new appearance, like some kind of insect. I have already said that the direction of Kim Kailuan's research was wrong from the beginning. Do you understand now? Luaccio opened his mouth and then realized, so, you are the fallen siren. The Emperor did not seem to like his original appearance. He only maintained that ugly appearance for a moment and then returned to his original appearance. "Actually, this is what the Lemurians look like," His Majesty said with a bitter smile, "or, after the Lemurians' bodies were integrated with magic energy, they mutated. This evolution gave us a stronger ability to use magic energy, but at the same time, It turned us into monsters and deprived us of the ability to survive under the sun. The other ancestor of Underwater City, Cassidy, believed that this was a punishment for the Lemurians. We should remember our mistakes and not succumb to its rule for the sake of restoring our false past. Even if we were to be imprisoned in the deep sea in our ugly forms, we should not lose our dignity as Lemurians. Every one of us has the curse of it. Once we leave its control, the ugliness and mutation will appear again. Of course, if too much anger, cruelty, and other negative emotions accumulate, it will easily expose our true colors. So, instead of saying that the FIDA competition is held to collect the eye of the sea abyss, it is more like a regular cleanup of the negative emotions on the people of the underwater city to prevent their true colors from being exposed. Luocio thought and said, "How long do you think this kind of thing can last?" "At least until now there are not many changes," His Majesty said calmly. "The underwater city can continue like this. If that is the case, why do you want to get the technology of the giant civilization? I am the last generation." His Majesty looked at Luocio and said softly, "When it comes to me, I can't find a qualified successor. By the way, do you know what kind of identity I have in front of it?" Boss Luo shook his head. A slave who is a shepherd," His Majesty said faintly. His Majesty said faintly, "I think the compromise made by my ancestor was wrong. The idea of another ancestor, Cassidy, is correct." Luocio thought for a while and said, "You want to fight against it, but at the same time, you are afraid of failure. You hope that Riaz will replace you after you fail and continue to be this shepherd's slave. You will issue the final challenge to it, as the Siren clan? I will die in this deep sea." His Majesty pointed at the area in front and said in a low voice, "Just like this land of death." This was a magical lake in the deep sea. A lake formed due to the difference in salinity. This salty lake in the depths of the seabed had a visible dividing line. Just like the difference in density caused by the difference in temperature, a large number of creatures gathered on this dividing line. Most of them were shellfish, densely and neatly arranged. At the edge of the dividing line, there were more corpses of deep-sea creatures. They did not rot, and the high salinity maintained their former appearance. This was the most spectacular museum at the bottom of the deep sea. "Why did you bring me here?" Louis XXXIX smiled and said, "First, because I think this place is really beautiful. The lakes in the deep sea are not common. Second, I always feel that this place is quiet enough. Death is just in front of me, within reach. There are not many wonders at the bottom of the sea, and this is one. It would be a pity to miss it." While the Emperor was talking, a deep-sea conger eel suddenly dived into the salty lake to look for food, but it soon swam out. After diving and floating a few times, the conger eel was already poisoned. It needed to get rid of this salty lake to have a chance to survive. So, its body began to struggle in the salty lake and seawater. It bent, rolled, sank, and tried its best to float up. After a few times, the conger eel finally succeeded in escaping from this salty lake. "Good luck." His Majesty showed a trace of a smile. Behind this smile, there were countless corpses of deep-sea creatures floating to the edge of the lake that would not rot. The last reason is... His Majesty looked at Luocio again and said calmly, "It is under this lake. Have you made your decision?" "Actually, there is nothing to decide about." His Majesty smiled casually. "Since I was born, this has been my mission. I just don't understand why compared to the White Tower, compared to the Eye of the Sea Abyss, compared to the Holy Armor, the last condition seems so insignificant." Boss Luo did not say anything. At this moment, he was using the identity of the store manager, so his communication with the customer could only stop here. In fact, he had already exceeded the limit by a lot. If it were the previous owner, he would not have come here. "Actually, Your Majesty, have you ever thought that maybe you can get more from me? For example, The power to fight or even destroy it? His Majesty listened quietly and then asked softly, "Is a whole underwater city enough?" Luocio shook his head. His Majesty seemed to have expected this. He smiled. "Then, why should I think about this? I understand." The lake in the deep sea suddenly dimmed, but soon there was a cluster of faint light. It was the light of the contract. In the extremely complicated cave of the mine, the Siren tribe on Prince Basha's side and the envoys from the underwater city on Madame Kai's side were hiding behind two huge and slanted pillars. They had already seen the terrifying beast's appearance. It could spit out terrifying acid, had tentacles with infinite strength, and had a huge exposed eye. It also had a mouthpart that could easily crush anything. "This is probably the biggest squid I've ever seen in my life." Professor Kim Kailuan, who was hiding on the side, shook his head and said, "I don't want to eat squid anymore." Madame Kaya did not say anything. The soldiers of the underwater city did not say anything either. However, they clearly agreed with the professor's words. At this moment, the Siren tribe prince who was hiding on the other side suddenly said loudly, "Everyone from the underwater city, I heard that your third army is outside? As the Siren tribe prince, I formally request for the political protection of the underwater city." Professor Kim Kailuan was stunned when he heard this. It was not because of the prince's loud shout, nor was it because of his cowardice. And it was only because, how could the term political asylum be used in such a way? #######PS. The next chapter will be later. Around 3 o'clock. Chapter 1705. The magic energy gun's firepower was now madly sweeping across the body of the giant squid monster. However, the powerful weapon that could break through the giant shark sirens could only slightly burn the surface of the squid monster's body when it hit the body of the giant squid monster. However, the squid monster's skin was so thick that it was despairing. When the squid monster waved its tentacles, a warrior from the underwater city was directly sucked into its mouth. Afterwards, he was pulverized by the mouth that was like a grinder. Blood and flesh splattered everywhere. "We can't hold on any longer. Madame Kaya, leave quickly. We'll cover you." Who knew what these people were trying to defend? The bloody battle made Professor Kim Kailuan's expression change slightly. Madame Kaya reacted very quickly. She called out, "Sea monsters, if you want to live, don't just watch from the sidelines. Unless you're confident that you can escape from this monster once we're all dead." Prince Bacha hid behind a giant shark sea demon and turned a deaf ear to it. He even let the nightmare sea demon protect him from both inside and outside. Then, he slowly moved to the side. Even Professor Kim Kailuan, who was in a delicate position, couldn't help but be amazed by Lu Zhou's cowardice. Madame Kaya could not help but feel slightly angry, but she suppressed it. She asked quickly, "How far are we from the exploration ship?" "It's not far. It's right up ahead." A warrior turned around, "But we need to use firepower to stop this monster, or we won't be able to outrun it. Please make a decision quickly, Madame Kaya. Abandoning my companions on the battlefield will be a disgrace to me for the rest of my life." Madame Kaya sucked in a deep breath and actually snatched the weapon from the warrior's hand. "I'll draw this monster away. You board the ship quickly. This is an order." "Madam!" the warriors cried out at the same time. However, Madame Kaya was already wielding two guns now. She kicked off the ground and leapt out. She shot the squid monster in the eye and immediately drew its fury. Professor Kim Kailuan's heart sank when he saw this. He was afraid that Kaya had already been brainwashed by the royal government to such an extent. "Professor, come with us." At this moment 2 warriors, one on the left and one on the right, lifted the professor up with grief and indignation. However, just as they were about to flee, they saw Prince Bacha of the Siren clan rushing back under the protection of a group of sirens. Everyone was shocked. Could it be that this group of shameless sea demons have found their conscience? "Run! There's another one!" It was Prince Ba Shah's scream. You again. You fiend, how many monsters do you want to provoke before you're satisfied? The leader of the soldiers cursed at the siren prince. You single-celled beast, why didn't your father smear you in the toilet? Because it doesn't have the habit of messing around in the toilet. Ba Shah replied seriously and said indignantly, Do you think I'm willing to stay in the sea monster tribe? Isn't it better to live in the underwater city? Now was not the time to quarrel. The leader of the soldiers quickly suppressed his anger and looked over. Sure enough, he saw that behind the unreliable siren prince, there was indeed another kind of squid monster chasing after him. Could it be that they had fallen into the giant monster's lair? What were the people of the Third Army doing? Did they already clear the nearby sea? On the other side, when Madame Kaya found out that there was a second squid monster, she could not help but feel anxious. With her current situation, she could not lure two monsters away at the same time. Everyone, listen up! Madame Kaya gritted her teeth and gave another order. Even if there's only one left, bring this back and give it to His Majesty. As she spoke, Madame Kaya threw the metal box that Prince Ba Shah handed over to the leader of the soldiers. Then, she charged towards the squid monster again. On the other side, Prince Ba Shah gave another order at the same time. Remember, you can lose Longang, you can lose your lives, but even if there's only one left, you have to send me out. I don't want to die here. As a result, the soldiers of the underwater city were furious, the siren soldiers were tired, and the two squid monsters were eyeing them covetously. Everyone was in danger. Is there really no way to escape? Professor Kim Kailuan frowned as he searched for a way out. He constantly gripped his walking stick in his hand, looking rather hesitant. However, the current situation was chaotic. Perhaps this was the best chance to rescue Longang. The kingdom's government probably already had all his information, but they had just let him do as he pleased. Professor Kim Kailuan understood how to deal with this. Rather than exposing his identity and forcing him to hide in the shadows, it was better to pretend that he did not know. Letting him jump around in the public would allow him to better grasp the situation. Professor Kim Kailuan became more and more fearful of His Majesty's methods. If he could safely return to the underwater city, who knew what kind of methods Louis XXXIX would use? Perhaps he would be brainwashed like Madame Kaya and become a puppet of the kingdom's government? Madame Kaya. At this moment, a cry interrupted Professor Kim Kailuan's train of thought. He subconsciously looked over, only to see that Madame Kaya had been wrapped up by one of the squid monster's tentacles. Madame Kaya was struggling with all her might. However, the strength of the squid monster's tentacles was terrifying. They instantly crushed the light armor on Madame Kaya's body. Just as Madame Kaya was about to die in the squid monster's mouth, a beam of light suddenly appeared. A purple-shelled serpent flew through the air, crashing into the tentacle that was wrapped around Madame Kaya. After that, a petite figure suddenly jumped out of the purple-shelled flying tumbler. At the same time, she pulled out a 1-meter-long lightsaber from the armrest of the flying tumbler. She did a backflip, spun, and slashed with 2 lightsabers in one go. The squid monster's tentacles were instantly cut off. Madame Kaya, who was wrapped up, broke free at the same time and fell to the ground. At the same time, the petite figure landed beside Madame Kaya. You are Madame Lyoga? Madame Kaya quickly got up, surprised and delighted. Aren't you accompanying His Majesty? Why are you here? I was worried that things might not go smoothly here, so I took some time to come here, Lyoga said indifferently. I never thought it would really be you. But it's not too late. Have you obtained the item? Madame Kaya nodded. You can go. I'll deal with this, Lyoga said quickly. Remember, you must deliver the item to Louis, no matter the cost, Lyoga said quickly. Madame Kaya sucked in a deep breath and directly saluted. She did not even look back as she charged into the formation of the soldiers of the underwater city. She took the box from the leader of the soldiers and held it firmly in her hand. Let's go. Madame Kaya ordered and quickly took a detour. When Prince Bacha saw this, he hurriedly ordered a group of sea demons to protect him. He shamelessly stuck close to Madame Kaya again. If it were not for the fact that His Majesty needed to send Long Gang to the royal court of the sea demons so that he could carry out his plan of extermination, the people of the underwater city would have been tempted to kill the prince right there and then. "I owe you a favor," Prince Bacha quickly said. "Next time, if you plan on exchanging prisoners of war, I'll definitely interfere and make the royal court suffer. Don't thank me. After all, we're very fertile here. The green algae will grow back very quickly after we cut them off." "Damn, I heard you're a prince? I'm hoping you can successfully become the ruler of the royal court." A soldier could not help but mock him. Prince Bacha shook his head. "I want that too, but unfortunately, I can't defeat those before me. However, my territory completely belongs to me. Are you interested in taking me in? I have a lot of sea demons in my territory, and they can work as coolies. Just give them enough to eat, and I can accept their wages as long as you pay me half. Oh right, I also want an identity as a resident of Underwater City, and a villa. I'm bringing my entire family to support the enemy. You can't mistreat me and dispel my enthusiasm." A ray of light pierced through the sea demon's guards and directly hit the sea demon prince's feet. It was Madame Kaya's cold shot. Prince Bacha immediately covered his mouth and hid behind the giant shark sea demon. He did not even intend to poke his head out. Perhaps it was because this prince's actions were too strange. The giant shark sea demon, who was loyal to the royal family, took a few steps back and exposed Prince Bacha to Madame Kaya's muzzle. "Don't waste your breath on these guys. Lady Lyoga has bought time for us. We can't waste it here." Madame Kaya snorted coldly and then took the lead and rushed to the front. However, at this moment, the second giant squid monster was chasing after them. However, before the second giant squid monster could take more than a few steps, the young girl, Lu Gu, directly threw out a light sword in her hand and pierced into the body of the second giant squid monster. The light sword did not leave her hand completely. It was actually connected to a thin cable. At this moment, a strange light flashed through Lyoga's eyes, and a bolt of electricity was directly released through the cable. Lightning and fire immediately appeared on the second squid monster. The intense pain caused the squid monster to cry out crazily. Madame Kaya and Prince Bacha used this opportunity to successfully escape from the region. However, the young lady clearly had to endure the fury of two monsters at the same time. "How can there be such things like you here?" The young girl, Crystal Song, was coldly sizing up the two giant monsters in front of her that were more than 100 times her size. Why didn't the Third Army discover such a powerful living reaction? However, the squid monsters clearly did not give the young lady any time to think. They both swelled their mouths at the same time, and two streams of acid shot out at the same time. The acid that could instantly corrode a hole in the rock fell down like a rainstorm. The young girl, Lu Gu, snorted coldly, and a small M mark suddenly appeared on her forehead. Then, she jumped up. She pulled back the sword of light she had stabbed into the second squid monster and wielded both swords again, swinging towards the first squid monster. Sounds of collisions and miserable cries constantly rang out from behind. They could imagine the accumulation of battle behind them, but they had no idea how Madame Lyoga was right now. The exploration ship could already be seen, and the soldiers of the underwater city could not help but perk up. However, Madame Kaya suddenly waved her hand at this moment. The soldiers all understood and raised their weapons, stopping Prince Bacha and the other sea demon soldiers. The prince could not help but ask in surprise, "We just went through a life-and-death situation. What are you doing?" "Don't worry, we won't kill you," Madame Kaya said indifferently, "but from here on out you can flee on your own. Whether you live or die will depend on your luck. The handover this time is over. There is no connection between us anymore." "That's wrong," the prince said miserably. I know that the underwater city and the sea demon race have accumulated endless hatred, but can hatred solve the problem? The sea demon race was once a member of the underwater city. The mistakes made by our ancestors have been washed away by the blood and souls of countless fallen soldiers. Why don't we let go of our prejudices and work hard for the great peace and coexistence? I know this is difficult, but everything is difficult at the beginning. As long as we are willing to take the first step, hope is right in front of us. Come, let us let go of our hatred. Bang! Madame Kaya still fired a shot, and Prince Bacha immediately jumped and dodged. Madame Kaya said coldly, I don't know if you're really a good-for-nothing, or if you're just a simpleton, but I believe that the royal court will not really send a good-for-nothing to carry out this transaction. I said that from here on out, there is no relationship between you and me. You can choose not to leave, but we will not stand by and watch. Don't blame the gun and bullets in my hand. However, at this moment, a blue light suddenly shot out from Madame Kaya's side and hit the chest of a sea demon soldier. It pierced through. Madame Kaya suddenly turned around. She saw that Professor Kinkelin had raised his walking stick before she knew it. Professor Kinkelin said loudly, Kill all these lowly sea demons and avenge the innocent people and brave warriors of the underwater city who died at their hands. With that, Professor Kinkelin swung his walking stick again before Madame Kaya could react. Another beam of blue light shot out, but this time, the sea demons were prepared. It only managed to injure the arm of a sea demon soldier. Kinkelin, you! Madame Kaya glared at him. Professor Kinkelin acted like he did not hear her, and swung his walking stick again. Roar! I already said that these hypocritical people of the underwater city are no good. Kill them all. Madame Kaya no longer cared about ordering Professor Kinkelin to be subdued when she saw how the furious sea demons and nightmares were about to swarm over. She fought them head-on. The two sides immediately became entangled in a brawl. In the battle, Professor Kinkelin moved around with great agility. Very soon, he arrived beside Madame Kaya without anyone noticing. Madame Kaya was shocked. Have you forgotten? I was your teacher for an entire year. Wasn't I the one who taught you how to fight? Professor Kim Kailuan chuckled softly as he slapped Madame Kaya's neck. Madame Kaya dodged in shock, but her hand was suddenly empty. The box that was supposed to be sent back to the Emperor had been snatched away by Professor Kinkelin. After that, the professor sped up again. He sneaked into the sea demon army amidst the chaos and picked up Long Gang, who had been thrown on the ground. Then, his walking stick shot out a grappling hook and grabbed onto a rock on the high ground in front of him. He pulled the professor and Long Gang over. Go back and tell your emperor, Professor Kinkelin said loudly. Don't think that you can control everyone. Destiny is still waiting for you. We'll make a comeback. ######### PS1. Thank you for your 50,000 coins tip, Unmatched Shang. Here's a cup of tea for the capitalist boss. PS2. 40 seconds plus 1 is equal to 83. Chapter 1706. The soldiers of the underwater city fell one by one. At the same time, the siren soldiers fell as well. Madame Kaya panted heavily. In the end, she pulled out a military bayonet from the chest of a nightmare siren. The battle had come to an end now. Madame Kaya looked around. Although all the siren soldiers had been wiped out, there were not many soldiers left from the underwater city. Apart from her, there were only 5 injured soldiers who could barely stand. God damn it, we've been played by that old man Kinkelin. The leader of the soldiers, who was covered in wounds, said hatefully, Madame Kaya, what do we do now? Replenish our ammunition as quickly as possible. We need to find Kinkelin. Madame Kaya's eyes shone with cold light. That's even more so for what His Majesty wants. At this moment, a soldier of the underwater city, who was stabbing a military knife into the corpses of the siren soldiers, suddenly called out, Madame Kaya, there's no corpse of that royal siren here. It's gone. That cowardly coward must have taken advantage of the chaos to escape. Tui, I've fought for so many years, but I've never seen such a shameless siren. And a royal too. Enough. Hunting down Kinkelin is more important. Everyone, follow. We can only leave the corpses of our comrades here for now. We'll retrieve them later. With Madame Kai Ya's orders, the remaining people hurried off in the direction that Professor Kinkelin had fled in. Professor Kinkelin might have looked like an old man, but once he exposed his battle prowess, his movements were no different from those elite soldiers. He ran for half an hour with Longang on his back before finding a dark hole to hide in and recover his strength. Although it was risky this time, the rewards were enough to make up for the losses. His identity had been exposed long ago anyway, so there was no need for him to continue using the identity of Professor Kinkelin. He was now Master Kinkelin. What he needed to think about was how to convert the rewards of this operation into something beneficial for the organization. Without a doubt, saving Longang was the most beneficial outcome. What he needed to think about right now was how to get out of danger. As for this thing, what exactly? Master Karen looked at the metal box in his hand, and couldn't help but fall into deep thought. According to what he knew, Louis XX's main goal this time was to let Longang carry some kind of virus into the Siren Royal Court. Releasing it unconditionally would definitely make the Siren Royal Court suspicious, so the thing the Emperor wanted the Siren Royal Court to give must have some kind of importance. The key was, what was Longang's status in the Siren Royal Court, and what kind of price was it worth for the Siren Royal Court to pay? It was a pity that Longang's eyes were lifeless at the moment, and it would be difficult to help him regain consciousness in a short period of time. Master Karen could not help but frown. He was afraid that the rewards of this risky venture would not be as great as he had imagined. He wanted to immediately remove the virus that was implanted in Longang's body, but he did not have the appropriate tools on hand. After some thought, Master Karen remembered Kong Hai. The Emperor might not have received the news that he had stolen the item. Of course, if he could not contact the Emperor, it was basically assumed that Kong Hai had been captured by the Emperor of Underwater City. The communicator was turned on, and Master Karen waited nervously. Soon, to Master Karen's surprise and joy, Kong Hai picked up his request and, "What? You're not with the Emperor of Underwater City? Where are you now? Send me the coordinates first. I need the serpent you brought out. Listen, my identity has been completely exposed. In other words, from now on we have to flee." Master Karen said a lot, but Kong Hai simply replied, "I'll wait for you." Master Karen was not angry. That was how Kong Hai was, and he rarely spoke. Master Karen himself did not know where Kong Hai came from. He had indeed picked up this mysterious youth when he went out to the deep sea. At that time, Kong Hai had forgotten his past and was taken in by him. After so many years, Kong Hai's appearance had not changed at all, which made Master Karen very surprised. He had kept Kong Hai, mostly because he wanted to unearth Kong Hai's secret. Of course, Kong Hai would often be willing to help him, which was one of the reasons Master Karen had taken him in. With that thought in mind, Master Karen decided to leave his hiding place immediately. But soon, he heard a commotion outside. As expected of Kaya, she tracked me down so quickly. Master Karen laughed bitterly. Madame Kaya was someone he had personally trained, but he did not know whether he should feel proud or helpless. A petite figure flipped in the air before landing on the ground. Crystal threw the two swords of light in her hands to the ground. After an intense battle, these two weapons were basically useless. They had been corroded by the acid of the squid monsters. Even though the weapons were useless, the two squid monsters had also fallen to the ground. Their eyes had been pierced, and large amounts of blood flowed out, dyeing the surroundings. The thick stench of blood was extremely nauseating. The squid monsters no longer had any signs of life. Lu Gu frowned and walked to the front of one of the squid monsters. However, right at this moment the young girl, Lu Go, suddenly kicked up a stone from the ground. She grabbed it with her hand and threw it out. The stone broke through the air and made a sharp sound. In the next moment it broke a huge stone pillar in the mine. "Come out." The young girl, Lu Go, said calmly as the pillar shattered and the pieces rolled down. A figure slowly walked out from the dust. It was Prince Ba Sha of the Sea Demon clan with his hands raised, as if he did not intend to resist. Seeing Crystal kick another stone into her hand, Prince Ba Sha hurriedly said in fear, "It's me, Ba Sha. Don't hit the wrong person, second sister Huang." "Who's your second sister Huang?" Crystal flicked the stone in her hand. The stone flashed across Prince Ba Sha's face, leaving a big cut on his face. Prince Ba Sha covered the cut on his face in pain and screamed in a shrill voice, "If you're not, then you're not. Why did you hit me?" Prince Ba Sha said with an aggrieved face, "I've never offended you before. There are so many princes and princesses in the imperial court, but I'm the most useless and fence-sitter." Seeing Crystal raise the stone again, Prince Ba Sha's face changed slightly and he quickly shut his mouth. Crystal snorted and didn't throw the stone again. Instead, she said indifferently, "Why did you come back? Aren't you here to exchange people?" Prince Ba Sha didn't walk up to him and just stood there. He thought for a while and said, "I was wondering how the Emperor of the Undersea City got in touch with the palace and made this deal. After seeing you, I suddenly understood." "What do you understand?" Crystal said indifferently. Prince Ba Sha narrowed his eyes. "It's rumored that second sister Huang, Princess Crystal Song, led an army to attack the Undersea City but failed and was captured. For so many years there was no news about her. Everyone guessed that Princess Crystal Song had died in the Undersea City. Now, it seems that this guess was wrong?" A smile appeared on Crystal Song's face. Prince Ba Sha didn't come close, but she slowly walked over, and then? There's no then. Prince Ba Sha's whole body shivered and he rushed forward. The young girl, Lu Go, frowned. Just as she was about to flick the stone with her fingers, Prince Ba Sha suddenly knelt on the ground. Furthermore, with the help of his forward momentum, he slid over. "Second sister Huang, count me in." At this moment, the prince said with tears and snot, "Those people call you Lord Lyoga, right? You must have a high status in the Undersea City, right? Sister Huang, the Sea Demon Imperial Court isn't a place for people to stay. Those guys fight for the throne of the Sea Demon King every day. Look, even an insignificant person like me was caught in the whirlpool. Otherwise, why would a piece of trash like me be sent here to exchange hostages with the Undersea City?" "You said you're a piece of trash. Why do I need you here?" Crystal Song sneered. "Because I'm the last conscience of the Sea Demon clan." Prince Ba Sha hurriedly blinked. "I can please people. I'm best at flattering and being extravagant. I also have a Sea Demon labor force in my territory. I can also help you be a spy for the Imperial Court." Crystal Song sneered and said, "What? Aren't you afraid that I've been hiding in the Undersea City all these years just to spy on the secrets of the Undersea City? I've always been loyal to the Sea Demon Imperial Court. Why hasn't the Sea Demon Imperial Court flattened the Undersea City?" Prince Ba Sha suddenly asked. "What did you say?" Crystal Song frowned. Prince Ba Sha shook his head and said, "If Sister Huang has really been hiding in the Undersea City all this time to spy on the secrets, why have the Sea Demon clan's attacks been fruitless for so many years and even been beaten by the Undersea City instead? Perhaps it's because I haven't found out the most secretive secrets of the Undersea City, so I can only gain the trust of the Undersea City's emperor by killing the Sea Demon clan. In fact, my heart has always been bleeding." "Oh my God!" Prince Ba Sha said sadly. "Why don't you let Ba Sha share half of the pain for you? You're really a talent." Crystal Song shook her head, then waved her hand and said, "I don't need your help. You don't have to hide anything about me. If you want to expose it, then expose it. If you want to publicize it, then publicize it. It doesn't matter even if you say that I've betrayed, in fact, I have." As expected of Princess Crystal Song. Even though you've betrayed us, you're still so confident and handsome. How can I not follow you? Prince Ba Sha's eyes were burning at this time. I have secrets about the Sea Demon Imperial Court that I can provide to the Undersea City. What secrets? Prince Ba Sha shook his head and said, I can't tell you now. I want to use it in exchange for my future life in the Undersea City. Aren't you afraid that I'll kill you now? If Sister Huang wanted to kill me, she could have done it from the beginning. No, you need to send Long Gang back to the Imperial Court. Crystal Song shook her head. Then, Prince Ba Sha said, the guy you're talking about was kidnapped by an old man in your team. What did you say? Crystal Song frowned. Prince Ba Sha hurriedly said, I saw it with my own eyes. Not only was Long Gang kidnapped, but the things I brought to exchange for Long Gang were also taken away by that old man. Whoosh! At this moment, the young girl, Lu Go, directly rushed out and swept past this Ba Sha prince like a gust of wind. Wait, second Sister Huang, what should I say about joining your team? If you don't say anything, I'll take it as a yes. Prince Ba Sha yelled at the girl's back. Do I really have to take it as a yes? Stay here and wait for me to come back. In response to Prince Ba Sha, there was only one sentence and a stone that was shot over. The stone hit Prince Ba Sha's feet and instantly cracked the ground. Prince Ba Sha was speechless. He waited for a while, but Crystal Song didn't appear again. Then, he heaved a sigh of relief. After a while, Prince Ba Sha sat on the ground. Meanwhile, a certain part of the two squid corpses suddenly bulged. Soon, the bulging sarcoma burst open. Then, two bloody things quickly crawled to Prince Ba Sha's side. They didn't attack. Instead, they squatted in front of Prince Ba Sha meekly. I was almost discovered. The prince shook his head at this moment. Then, with a shake of his hand, he shook out an item from his wide sleeve. It was a seamless metal box, exactly the same as the one he gave to Kaya. At this moment, Prince Ba Sha muttered, the job of the Undersea City Emperor is really hard to do. With that, Prince Ba Sha stood up with his hands on his knees and left quietly with the two bloody things. After Prince Ba Sha left, a figure slowly appeared in the air. Boss Luo III took out a handkerchief and covered his nose while watching Prince Ba Sha leave. Their thoughts were linked. While Prince Bacho was talking with the girl, Lu Go, on the other side of the lake, the Undersea City Emperor was also talking about the real secret of the Undersea City. Boss Luo III turned to look at the two squid corpses. He discovered something. The two squid corpses were the same as the corpses of the demons that he and Su Zijuan encountered at the seal overseas. At the same time, they were similar to the skeletons on the walls of the crack in front of the door that Kong Hai went to. The demons in the sea. Undersea City, Sea Demon Clan. Deep Sea Demon Clan, Boss Luo III muttered to himself. It and Cicero's door. It stopped here. Boss Luo III suddenly smiled and said softly, it seems that this will be a very fulfilling day. Chapter 1707. A light ball floated out from Luochio's palm and slowly came to the front of Louis XXXIX. This was a light ball that contained the soul of an entire giant power civilization and the technology of symbiosis with machines. The Emperor touched this light ball, and in an instant, countless knowledge began to flow into his brain, from the most basic to the limit of the giant power civilization. It was clear without any jerkiness. Louis XXXIX was surprised to find that even though such a huge amount of knowledge flowed into his brain, he did not feel the slightest bit of pain. The Emperor held this light ball of knowledge in his hand and was silent for a while. Then he frowned and said in surprise, I can already use this technology? Why not? Luochio smiled. The Emperor smiled bitterly and said, originally, even if I got this technology, I was prepared to spend a long time to study, absorb, and digest it. I didn't expect it to be directly imprinted in my brain in such a magical way. It even saved me the time to study. Holding the luminous orb of knowledge inheritance, His Majesty the Emperor was now like the most outstanding scholar in this mystical civilization of giants, possessing the pinnacle of knowledge in this technology. Would you say that it was not mystical? Luochu said calmly, "We always want to give our guests the most convenient things. This slightly messes up what I wanted to do." Louis XXXIX was not even surprised by this. He just suddenly fell into deep thought. He and Luochu, to be exact, Boss Luo too, was still at the edge of the lake, at the bottom of the sea, and had not left. The Emperor suddenly said, "It is under this land of death. Have you ever thought that I brought you here to get this technology from you and push you into the abyss of death to become one of its food?" Luochu said casually, "The effectiveness of the contract will not change because of my presence or absence. The most terrifying thing about you is," Louis XXXIX said seriously, "you can make people unconsciously believe what you say, and in it is basically the truth. But the sad thing is, out of the instinct of self-protection, people who hear it may always treat it as a lie and doubt it. Your Majesty, what do you plan to do now?" Luochu directly changed the topic. The Emperor weighed the light ball of knowledge inheritance in his hand and looked up. Probably to put it into practice immediately. It was true that the Emperor had and mastered this knowledge, but it was also true that the Emperor had never put it into practice. The problem of theory no longer existed, and the problem of practice would probably not be a problem. "Then I hope you can get results as soon as possible, Your Majesty." Louis XXXIX smiled faintly. "Have you really never thought about my intention of bringing you here?" "I don't care about this." Luochu shook his head gently. "For me, it's enough to know what is given and what is received. Here I am myself." Emperor, Louis XXXIV suddenly said in a low voice, "I hope that you have never mentioned these words to anyone. I simply hope that I've already said these words to someone, and that there's someone who knows my story." In an instant, Louis XXXIX rushed out of this land of death to do what he wanted to do. After the Emperor of the Undersea City left, the lake began to surge slightly and dense bubbles began to appear. After that, black shadows slowly crawled out of the brine pool filled with death. They were all demons, violent and ferocious, as if they were a mixture of destruction and destruction, driven by their instincts. Louis, I can smell your scent. Where's Louis? Louis, come back, let me take another bite. Louis, gone. Screams sounded. The demons crawling out of the land of death almost covered the border between the brine pool and the seawater. They gathered around Luochu and gradually approached. "It's not Louis. What is it?" "I don't know. It doesn't look delicious." "It looks like a human." "Is it a human?" "Ah. I'm hungry." Luochu watched these demons approach and suddenly said softly, "He's the most dazzling thing in the entire Undersea City. Looking at him, I feel the same as you. Go back. After a while, he'll come to you in a more dazzling way." However, the hungry demons were acting on their instincts. The human in front of them was as ordinary as a mussel. That was all. "You'll die," Luochu said softly. His voice was like a raindrop falling into a calm lake. It only caused a circle of shallow ripples, but it kept on rippling. They had never known fear. Even the demons who were originally treated as food screamed, wailed, and retreated frantically. They crawled up as fast as they could and retreated back to the land of death, or even faster. In the blink of an eye, silence was restored. The eel that had escaped death and looked for food everywhere swam out of the cracks of the rocks. It tried to dive into the brine pool to look for food again, but it was poisoned again. It was still struggling with all its might. It had escaped once. But this time it was not so lucky. As a result of its failure to escape, its body fell directly into the lake. Most of the time, luck only appeared once. Or it never really appeared. Riaz and Krypton Gold had been exploring this place for some time. They were sure that this place used to be a huge mine, but it had been abandoned. Riaz had given up looking for a way out when he saw the complex structure of the mine. If they went too far, it might affect the progress of the rescue team outside. As for Helen, she did not seem to want to go too far from this place. She said that her sisters had only lured the huge sea monster away and would come back to look for her. Riaz asked her how long it had been, but Helen could not say anything. She only said that it had been a long time. She probably died a long time ago, Krypton Gold muttered at the side. The little siren could not help but feel sad. Then, they became silent. The only thing that could make them happy was that they didn't have to starve. That crazy vendor had thrown out a lot of magical beans. Eating one was enough to fill their stomachs. Even if no one came to rescue them for 10 days or half a month, they could still survive for a long time. Helen said that she did not want to eat this thing in the short term. Her stomach was still bloated. He couldn't help but be scolded for spending too much money. After we go back, I will ask my father's people to come over and help you find your sisters. Krypton Gold suddenly looked at Helen and said, My father has a lot of employees in the Chamber of Commerce. If we can't find them in 1 month, we will take 2 months. If it is not enough, I will hire more people to turn this place upside down. Even if there are only bones left, we can still find them. Then, Krypton Gold was hit by Riaz's elbow. Luckily, he did not pass out. But Helen smiled through her tears. She felt that whether it was Riaz or Krypton Gold, they were both kind people. It was just that they treated people in different ways. She said that she would sing for them. The little siren sang a song that did not contain the siren's natural magic. It was a song that she had learned since she was born, and it came from the depths of her soul. Krypton Gold held his chin and gradually became fascinated by the song. Riaz was next to him, and he also held his chin and listened. They looked at Helen, who was standing on a rock with her eyes closed, holding her hands and singing. Suddenly, they remembered that a long time ago, they sat in front of the magic screen and watched a certain singer perform in the underwater city. Krypton Duogene said, Actually, this sea demon looks pretty good. Riaz glanced at him. Helen is very beautiful, okay? Dorigen rolled his eyes. My dad said that all good-looking women lie. Riaz snorted. Then, is your mother the street flower of the East 13th Street? Krypton Gold clenched his fist. Don't talk about my mother. Riaz surrendered. They continued to hold their chins, leaned together, and watched and listened with fascination. Krypton Gold suddenly said, Although I can't remember why I am here, Riaz. Let's find a time and seriously compete again? Riaz said okay softly. Krypton Gold said seriously, If you lose, you have to be my supporter and help me ascend to the throne of the number 1 flying serpent, player in the underwater city. Riaz still said okay, but he did not ask what he would do if he won. Helen's singing stopped at this time, and she still wanted to continue. She looked nervously at the 2 teenagers in front of her, fearing that she did not sing well. In fact, sirens were a profession that God gave to them. Even if they were tone-deaf, they could eat for a lifetime with their voices alone. How could singing from the soul not be good? But this kind of singing had never appeared in front of humans. The little siren's sisters also warned her that she could not sing this kind of song without any magic in front of humans. The soul singing of a siren could only be reserved for those she liked. I can't sing well. Helen blushed and lowered her head. Riaz was stunned. The teenager's heart beat quickly. Krypton Gold was so much better. He clapped his hands vigorously. But it was not enough. He directly grabbed Riaz's hands and clapped together with him. Then, probably to take revenge for the previous elbow attack, Krypton Gold kicked Riaz back fiercely and kicked him in front of Helen. I'll go over there to settle it. Don't follow me. Krypton Gold snorted and said, Especially you, Riaz, I'm afraid you will become autistic. With that, Krypton Gold trotted away with a smug look on his face. Don't listen to him. Riaz was anxious to explain something. I won't. Helen blinked and asked in confusion, You won't what? Autistic? Helen giggled. She still didn't understand, but she felt that Riaz's embarrassed look at this time was funny. Riaz scratched his head and laughed. He said subconsciously, "You look so beautiful when you laugh." The heart of the siren girl sped up a little. "I'll go check on Krypton Gold. He hasn't come back after so long. I don't know if he's in danger," Riaz said hurriedly. The siren girl blinked and said, "He just left?" "I'll check my equipment." Riaz lowered his head and rummaged through the first aid kit randomly. The siren girl squatted down and kissed Riaz's embarrassed cheek. She was like an elf in the sea. She said in a clear voice, "Riaz, I like you." No, she was an elf in the sea. Riaz subconsciously stroked his cheek and thought, Krypton Gold, why isn't he back yet? What should I do? He had no experience in this field. Krypton Gold was indeed solving some of the unnecessary problems in life. He even mischievously waved his hand and made the water mark draw one arc after another on the ground. Suddenly, a black shadow flashed past him. Krypton Gold was startled and quickly pulled up his pants. However, the black shadow flashed again and appeared on the other side. Who's there? There was no answer. Instead, one shadow suddenly turned into two shadows and flashed past Krypton King's side. The young man did not intend to go forward and investigate by himself. Instead, he cautiously retreated, intending to regroup with Riaz. He turned around and ran. However, Krypton Gold seemed to have bumped into something and was knocked to the ground. Then, the two shadows suddenly pounced on him. One of the shadows even stepped on his hands. Krypton Duo Gene immediately sucked in a breath of cold air. He saw that the thing that was stepping on him was actually a bloody thing. It looked like some kind of dog, but it was bigger and more powerful. Krypton Gold widened his eyes in horror. "Hello." Just when Krypton Gold was about to shout to warn Riaz and Helen in the distance, a voice suddenly greeted him. Krypton Gold subconsciously looked toward the voice. He saw a person wearing a patched robe. It was a siren. A royal. "Look what prey I caught. Oh, it's a young man from the underwater city. I'm so lucky." "Don't come over," Krypton Gold shouted. Riaz. His mouth had been directly sealed by the bloody monster. Under his horrified gaze, the siren prince walked over with a smile on his face. He squatted in front of Krypton Gold and said with a smile, "I'm very good at skinning." Riaz sat there obediently, and the siren girl beside him was also sitting there obediently. Whenever their gazes met, Riaz would immediately look away. However, there was no fear in Helen's eyes. She was natural and unrestrained. Krypton Gold has been gone for a long time this time. Why hasn't he come back yet? I'll go and see. Riaz quickly stood up. This time, he really had been gone for a long time. Helen nodded and stood up as well. At this moment, "I'm coming back. I'm coming back." Looking at the figure that trotted back, Riaz couldn't help but secretly sigh in relief. It was really dangerous for him to be alone with Helen. ######PS1. This chapter's network fluctuation has been failing to upload PS2. Next chapter 0300 left or right probably. Chapter 1708. You found a path? Krypton Gold had returned and brought back such news, which made Riaz overjoyed. He even grabbed Krypton Gold's wrist and hurriedly asked, "Where is it?" "It's not far ahead." Krypton Dorkin waved his hand and pointed. "It seems to have been exposed because of the previous shock. But I'm not sure if it's dangerous. It's up to you to decide whether to go or not." Riaz looked at Helen subconsciously. He knew that Helen wanted to stay here and wait for her sisters to come back. "If you trust me, after we leave, we will come back and help you find your sister." "I trust you." The siren girl's simple words seemed to give Riaz great courage. Riaz didn't spend too much time to make a decision. After the siren girl said this, Riaz had already made up his mind. "Then let's go and have a look." Riaz looked at Krypton Dorkin and said, "Come with me." Krypton Dorkin nodded and turned around to walk back. Riaz called Helen and asked her to come to his side. Then he squatted down and motioned Helen to lie on his back again. But this time, Helen shook her head and reached out to Riaz's hand. She whispered, "Hold my hand. Okay. Don't let go of me." This was a feeling that he had never tasted before, and it was the same for the Siren Girl. Krypton Gold turned around, looked at the two of them in confusion, and muttered, "What happened when I left?" "Nothing," Riaz said in unison. Kor Dorkin rolled his eyes at Riaz. His gaze made Riaz feel a little guilty. However, Helen's soft, bone-like hand in his palm gave him a strange feeling. Suddenly, Riaz's nose twitched. Then he said vigilantly, "Wait, I seem to smell something." "What smell?" Krypton Dorkin stopped and didn't look back. Riaz hesitated for a moment and carefully identified the smell. "Blood. It's blood. It's coming from there." Krypton Duo Jean thought for a moment and said, "When I came back, I saw the remains of some deep-sea creatures. It looked like they had been gnawed by something. It was a little creepy just looking at it." "Ah." Hearing this, Helen let out a low cry of horror and said in a trembling voice, Maybe it's the huge sea monster that attacked me before. We can't stay here for too long." Riaz was shocked and hurriedly said, "We have to hurry. We'll be there soon." Krypton Duogene gave him a reassuring look. He could vaguely hear the sound of wind coming from a crack in front of him. This seemed to mean that there was indeed an exit on the other side of the crack. They were tearing at something. It was a badly mutilated body. Clearly visible muscle tissue and white bone dregs. The turbid smell of blood permeated the air. The two bloody dog-like monsters had almost bitten off half of the body with their sharp teeth. Suddenly, the two bloody monsters stopped. They seemed to have discovered something and raised their heads in confusion. A figure walked over at this moment. The bloody dog-like monsters lowered their bodies, and their tightly clenched sharp teeth could be seen in their cracked mouth. They felt as if their territory was being invaded, so they immediately let out a roar. However, the newcomer just glanced at the two bloody dog-like monsters, and they instantly lowered their heads. Then, they spread out crazily with their tails between their legs. He came to the front of the body that only had half of its body left. Do you have any other wishes?" Luocio 3 asked in a low voice. The body of the dead man suddenly shook. He didn't even have a face at this moment. On his bloody cheeks, a pair of eyes that had lost their eyelids moved. He couldn't speak. His throat had been bitten, and his vocal cords had been torn apart. He could only stare at the person in front of him with his horrifying eyes. For a long time, he didn't move at all. He was truly dead. "I heard you," Luocio nodded gently. "Don't worry. I'll help you complete it." A pale white ball of light slowly floated out of his shattered chest, and then landed in Boss Luo's palm. After that, 3's figure gradually faded away. He returned. In the complex terrain of the mine, a few figures leaped and moved quickly among the forest-like stone pillars. It was Madame Kaya and the other remaining warriors of the underwater city who were chasing after Master Karen. Suddenly, a petite figure caught up to them, and landed in front of Madame Kaya. They hurriedly stopped. The one who caught up was naturally the young girl Lu Gu, who had finished off the two squid monsters. Madame Kaya thought that Lu Gu would catch up, so she had left marks along the way. When she saw Lu Gu, Madame Kaya directly said, "Madame Lu Gu, Professor Kim Karen suddenly." "I know," the young girl waved her hand and directly said, "and you still haven't caught up to him." Madame Kaya said helplessly, "After all, his true identity is Master Jean Kailuan of Heaven's Mandate. He's a powerful battle master himself. Madame Lu Gu, I've never understood why His Majesty would arrange for Jean Kailuan to join this exchange despite knowing his identity." "I don't know either," the young girl gave an answer that left Madame Kaya deeply puzzled. "You don't know either." Madame Kaya could not help but be surprised. Lu Gu shook her head. "That's not important. I'll catch up to him next. If you can keep up, then keep up." With that, the young girl took a step forward. Her speed really made Madame Caille and the others feel rather helpless. In the blink of an eye, she had already traveled several hundred meters. She could be said to be as fast as Serpent, so how could they keep up? Madame Caille? Keep up. Madame Caille waved her hand. Otherwise, we'll be letting down our companions who died behind us. Let's just hope nothing happens later. This young girl, who was known as the Emperor's Shadow in the underwater city, actually did not know why the Emperor had ordered Professor Kim Karen to join the diplomatic group, or in other words, why did the Emperor hide it from Lu Go? Doubt flashed through Madame Caille's mind, but she temporarily suppressed it very soon. No matter what the reason was, she only needed to maintain her absolute loyalty to the Emperor of the underwater city. It was like some sort of seal, an absolute order. It was a voice that constantly rang out in her head. On the other side, Master Karen had already successfully left the mine according to the coordinates Kong Hai had given him. However, Master Karen could not help but become doubtful when he entered the water once more. He didn't know where Kong Hai had run to. It turned out to be such a strange place. There were a tremendous number of bones of exotic beasts buried on the walls on both sides of the crack. Even this knowledgeable scholar could not help but feel shocked. He had never found any relevant records in the distant history of the underwater city. The deeper he went, the more shocked and uneasy he felt. However, he soon saw 3 Pegasi docked together. He recognized these 3 Pegasi. They were indeed the models used by Kong Hai and the other 2 mysterious auditing students from Tianchen Courtyard. Master Karen frowned. He had already known that Kong Hai was with the 2 mysterious auditing students when he contacted Kong Hai. However, with the pursuers behind him, he could no longer care about that. Master Karen directly swam to where the 3 Pegasi were docked. He did not have any equipment that could withstand the pressure of the deep sea. He was relying on a small device he carried with him to support himself. However, the device could not be maintained for too long, and he urgently needed the Pegasi's anti-pressure system. As for Long Gang did not need to care about the pressure of the deep sea. His body was extremely special, and he did not need any defensive equipment to move freely in the deep sea. Even if Long Gang was unresponsive, he was still alive and well. The layers of gill-like folds behind his ears were trembling slightly, filtering the oxygen in the water for him. "Professor, we're here." Just as Master Karen pressed his palm on the control panel of the Pegasi and was about to activate it, Kong Hai's voice suddenly sounded. Master Karen's pupils contracted slightly, but he did not withdraw his palm from the control panel. However, the Pegasi did not activate because of his touch. The panel showed a message: insufficient authority, unable to activate. This was a military Pegasi. The Emperor gave it to everyone to use in this trip, but it seemed that it was only limited to the initial pilot. Master Karen cursed the Emperor of the underwater city in his mind, and withdrew his palm resentfully. "Kong Hai, activate the Pegasi immediately. I want to leave this place." He turned around and looked at Kong Hai, who was swimming towards him. "I saved Long Gang. Congratulations." Kong Hai glanced at Long Gang, who was carried on Master Karen's back indifferently, and asked curiously, "How did you save him?" "We'll talk about it later." Master Karen urged, "Activate the Pegasi first." But Kong Hai didn't move. Boss Luo and Mississippi Maid swam over slowly. Seeing Luo Chio and Mississippi Maid coming together, Master Karen became more anxious. He couldn't help raising his voice. "Kong Hai, did you hear me? Activate the Pegasi." "I'm afraid not." Kong Hai shook his head. "Professor, it's obvious that the Pegasi is a military signal. There must be a tracking device installed by the kingdom's government. Your goal is to escape with Long Gang, right? If you use these serpents, you'll be too obvious a target. Perhaps you'll be captured by the 3rd Legion before you even get out of the Somna Trench." Master Karen sneered. "It's just a tracking device. I can't remove it." Your consideration is unnecessary. It can't be removed. Kong Hai shook his head. I've seen it before. The device is connected to the power system. Once it's removed, the power system will stop. I think this is probably a measure the kingdom's government took to prevent the soldiers from acting abnormally. What? Master Karen was shocked. Cold sweat gradually dripped down. He gritted his teeth and said sternly, "There's nothing we can do. Looks like we can only walk through the Somna Trench. The other side of the trench is the territory of the Sea Demon tribe. Unless the underwater city plans on directly declaring war on the Sea Demon tribe, it won't be easy for them to catch up to us. The prerequisite is that you can walk through the Somna Trench on foot, Professor." Kong Hai remained calm. "Can't you stop arguing with me for once?" Master Karen looked at Kong Hai furiously, but there was nothing he could do. Even he did not know how long he had known Kong Hai. Throughout all this time, apart from Kong Hai's appearance remaining the same, even his personality of mocking him had not changed. "I'm only providing you with a possibility for reference." Master Karen shook his head with a bitter smile. How could he not know about this? However, the pursuers behind him had made him lose his composure. If the pursuers were just Kai Ya's group, Master Karen would still be confident about escaping. However, the appearance of the Silver Moon Demoness made Master Karen unable to calm down. He rubbed his forehead and looked around instinctively. He asked in doubt, "Why have you come to a place like this? What is this place?" "This place might be related to my origins," Kong Hai directly said. "I found some fragmented memories here. I seem to have come from here in the very beginning." "Your origins?" Master Karen instinctively opened his mouth. Kong Hai pointed ahead as he waved the lighting tool in his hand. Master Karen raised his head and saw a huge door in the depths of the crevice. Above the door, there were actually numerous carvings of ferocious and lifelike strange beasts that caused one's heart to tremble in fear with a single glance. Finally, there was the huge emblem at the center of the door. "We're currently trying to find a way to open this door," said Kong Hai. Master Karen lowered his head in thought. He said nothing. At this moment, Kong Hai suddenly said, "Professor, can I take a look at what you're holding?" Master Karen instinctively looked at the metal box in his hand. After a moment of hesitation, he tossed it to Kong Hai, but he did not tell him the origins of the metal box. Along the way, Master Karen had already tried to open the metal box, but it was to no avail. There was no opening to the metal box at all. It was a complete hole. Kong Hai picked up the metal box and studied it for a while. Suddenly, he looked at Luochio. "Mr. Luo, look at this box. Don't you think it's shaped like the two grooves on the door? Perhaps you can give it a try." Luochio smiled at this moment. Kong Hai glanced at this Mr. Luo in surprise. He remembered what this Mr. Luo had said before. Perhaps things would turn for the better if he waited. Did he already know? "What grooves?" Master Karen asked in a hurry. However, Kong Hai did not respond. He kicked his legs slightly and his body climbed toward the huge emblem on the door. "What grooves?" Master Karen raised his eyebrows and stared at Luochio. He asked sternly. "It's a mechanism similar to the door-opening mechanism found on the door." Luochio was not angry. He simply said, "This box seems to fit." Although Boss Luo wasn't angry, Miss Maid, who didn't plan to write in the notebook this time, narrowed her eyes slightly, and then flicked her fingers silently. In an instant, the micro-device hidden in Master Karen's body to resist the deep-sea pressure suddenly exploded. This explosion obviously could not cause any harm. But the terrifying pressure that followed instantly made his face turn into the color of a pig's liver. The blood vessels all over his body were swollen. Suffocation. Calling for help could not be shouted. ######PS1. Well, I planned to take a nap and then write. But I ended up spending 2 more hours in space travel. PS2. 4183. Chapter 1709. In the face of imminent death, Master Karen's muscles suddenly swelled. At the same time, he closed his mouth tightly and his chest slightly swelled. This change brought him back from the brink of death in an instant, but at this time, his face was flushed red. This seemed to be some kind of technique that stimulated the potential of the muscles in the body to strengthen the body's endurance. Then, Master Karen put his hands into the clothes and pulled hard. The clothes instantly swelled and quickly formed a thin layer of light film to resist the surrounding pressure. After a while, Master Karen heaved a sigh of relief. His swollen muscles gradually shrank back, but his face was pale, mostly due to fear. Fortunately, I have the habit of bringing an extra set of anti-pressure equipment. Master Karen secretly rejoiced at his own cautiousness, but he only thought that the previous anti-pressure device had suddenly exploded because of overload. But he did not have a third set of anti-pressure equipment. As for the technique that caused his body to suddenly swell, it was a specially developed deep-sea anti-pressure technique that required a lot of stamina and could not be maintained for a long time. It could only be used as an emergency. Therefore, keeping himself safe under such great pressure had become Master Karen's top priority at this time. He subconsciously shifted his gaze to the two auditing students of unknown origins in front of him. The master had once indirectly asked Riaz about the origins of this man and woman. Riaz did not say too much and only accidentally let it slip once. Therefore, Master Karen only knew that the reason why Boss Luo and Miss Maid stayed in Tianqian courtyard was to do a business with the emperor. Perhaps the emperor of Undersea City valued this business, otherwise, he would not casually let people stay in Tianqian courtyard. But compared to the mysterious origin of these two people, there was no doubt that his own safety was more important. Master Karen's main purpose was the white couple's protective suits that Luoqiu and Miss Maid were wearing. This protective suit was obviously more advanced than the anti-pressure equipment on his body. It was definitely a premium product of the royal government. "Professor, there is a spare protective suit here. Put it on first." Boss Luo suddenly walked to the side of his serpent and took out a gray protective suit from the trunk. "Put this on first." Master Karen was stunned. When the protective suit slowly floated toward him, he immediately grabbed it and quickly put it on. "Why are you helping me?" "We've learned a lot from the professor's lectures over the past few days." Boss Luo smiled. "Knowledge is one of the most precious things. So, this is nothing. Pretty good." Master Karen nodded calmly, but his eyes would occasionally wander between Boss Luo and Miss Maid's serpent. It was still unrealistic to cross the trench on foot. If he used Flying Serpent, the chances would be higher. But for him, Long Gang and Kong Hai, only Kong Hai's Flying Serpent was clearly not enough. "Professor!" Boss Luo suddenly called out again. What's the matter?" Master Karen was stunned. A thought that just appeared in his mind seemed to be suppressed at this moment. He was secretly shocked, thinking that it wasn't wise to make a move. Plan before acting, before figuring out the origin of these two people. He must remember to be calm. There were many founders of the iDestiny organization, but he was the only one who survived until now. His carefulness and cautiousness had always been his life-saving magic weapon. This time, if he didn't know that the Emperor already knew his identity, he naturally wouldn't expose his identity. Even if Long Gang was really taken back to the Sea Demon Royal Court, he would silently wait for the opportunity. It was really because of the situation at that time. A heaven-sent opportunity was presented in front of him, leaving him with almost no choice but to rob Long Gang and take away the Emperor's things. Master Karen felt that this action of his could be regarded as a great achievement in the future and be used as a teaching material in front of the newcomers of Destiny. "I can brag about it for a lifetime." "Riaz, what do you think?" Luoqiu asked. This question completely exceeded all of Master Karen's conjectures. Why did he suddenly mention Riaz at this time? Wait, knowing that he rescued Long Gang and was probably captured by the underwater city, why did these two people look indifferent? It's too abnormal. Once this thought appeared in his mind, Master Karen's brain quickly turned. Will they capture me and take credit in front of the Emperor of the underwater city? Or will they rob the Emperor of what he wants? As for Riaz. While thinking crazily, Master Karen said without changing his expression, "This child is quite smart and innocent. But the children in the underwater city are basically more innocent. After all, they have always been trained in this direction. The general environment is like this. Compared to other children, Riaz isn't much different." "Professor, do you like this child?" Boss Luo smiled. "I don't like him." Master Karen shook his head. "I didn't teach him for long, so I didn't have much contact with him." "Then, based on your identity as a historian, what kind of person is the Emperor of the underwater city?" Boss Luo asked again. This question gave Master Karen a headache. What kind of rule is this? Is this to determine my attitude toward the Emperor, toward the government of the underwater city from my answer, so as to determine their next action? Capture me or ignore me? Something like that. It's just a simple chat. Boss Luo smiled and said, "It doesn't mean anything. For example, I think the Emperor is a very interesting person, and the ice cream he makes is very delicious." Master Karen shook his head and said, "Mysterious, domineering. Under the gentle face, there's an almost extreme desire for control. The Emperor of the underwater city is probably the most terrifying person I've met in my life." "That's right." Boss Luo nodded. Master Karen was startled and said in surprise, "What's right?" Luoqiu didn't speak and looked up. "Mr. Kong Hai is back." As expected, Kong Hai swung his legs and quickly descended. Very soon, he returned to Master Karen's side. The master no longer cared about his so-called chat with Boss Luo. He asked in a hurry, "How is it? Can the metal box open the door?" Kong Hai tossed the metal box back to Master Karen and shook his head. "The size matches perfectly, but there's no reaction when I put it in." "It matches perfectly, but there's no reaction?" Master Karen opened his mouth in surprise. Kong Hai thought about it and said, "There are a total of 2 grooves. Perhaps there'll only be a reaction after both grooves are put in. Or perhaps the box wasn't the key in the first place. It's a fake. There should only be 2 possibilities." "It can't be fake." Master Karen shook his head. He had personally seen the Siren Prince hand the box to Kaya. Afterwards, he had risked his life to take it from Kaya. He had kept it with him the entire time. "Then I might need to," said Kong Hai indifferently. "Why aren't you excited at all?" Master Karen could not help but frown. "Is this related to your past? Even if I'm excited, it won't change the fact that you only have 1 box." Kong Hai remained emotionless. "It's impossible for you to conjure up a second one. Being excited will only affect your judgment. It's useless." Master Karen shook his head. He could not fall into an endless debate with Kong Hai. He had never won an argument against Kong Hai before. "Forget it. Since we can't open the door for now, there's no point in staying here," said Master Karen directly. Master Karen said, "At the very least, we now have a clue about your background. We can think of a way later. Right now, activate your serpent. We'll break through the Third Army's blockade and infiltrate the territory of the Sirens. We'll think about it after hiding for a while." "Has the underwater city already put a bounty on you?" Kong Hai asked after some thought. "Isn't that obvious?" Master Karen rolled his eyes in exasperation. "I'm already like this. Is the kingdom blind?" However, Kong Hai shook his head. "If they really want to capture you, you probably won't be able to come here. The Third Army outside isn't just for show. They haven't done anything yet. Exchanging Long Gang with the Sirens is a secret operation." Master Karen frowned. If news of the Emperor of the underwater city privately exchanging a wanted criminal with the Sirens gets out, what would the military think? Moreover, the Emperor is using the Longgang to poison the royal court of the Sirens, so the fewer people who know about this, the better. That's why Kai Ye and the others definitely won't dare to make a public announcement. It's not strange that the Third Army hasn't done anything yet. You can use another reason, said Kong Hai indifferently. You can just say that you've already committed treason. There's no need for a specific reason. No one will doubt the Emperor's words. This. Master Karen was shocked. Indeed, it was rather illogical that the Third Army had not done anything yet. He had stolen the Longgang and the box. He had even ruined the Emperor's plan of using the Longgang as a chess piece. How could the Emperor of the underwater city not be furious? Something's not right. Master Karen pinched his forehead. This gives me a very bad feeling. It's like I've been set up by something. But what is it? Someone's coming. Kong Hai suddenly raised his head and looked at a certain spot above the crack. Master Karen was shocked. He hurriedly tightened his grip on his cane and pulled the Longgang to his side. Boss Luo and the servant girl both looked over. They were not too surprised. In the darkness, a few figures slowly descended. With the illumination of tools, both sides could see each other clearly. Wow. Big brother, big sister. Riaz. It's you? How did you? Master Karen's mouth was agape in shock. Master Karen was probably too shocked to see Riaz here. As a result, he did not notice the expression of the other young man with Riaz. Krypton Dorkin blinked. His expression was rather strange. He thought to himself, how did this old man come here? No one told me that this old man would appear here. Even the people in front of me were the same. Krypton Dorkin frowned for a moment, but he quickly recovered. Big brother, big sister, are you lost too? Riaz was rather excited. He stepped forward and said, my flying serpent crashed in an accident. Oh, this is Krypton Dorkin, my friend. This is Helen, also my friend. Why is there a door here, so tall? At this moment, Helen nervously grabbed Riaz's arm and half hid behind him. Don't be afraid. They are my friends. Riaz comforted her softly. Helen didn't say anything. She just nodded silently. She seemed to have thought of something. She quickly got close to Riaz's ear and whispered, If something happens, you must hold on to me. I swim faster. What situation? What will happen? Riaz didn't understand. Helen just shook her head and whispered again, I don't know. I just feel uneasy. These two people, they feel a bit. You mean big brother and big sister? They are very nice people. They helped me a lot. Riaz shook his head. Although they are a bit mysterious, perhaps they have a way to help you find your sisters. Really? Helen's eyes suddenly brightened up. On the other side, Boss Luo and Miss Maid looked at the little siren behind Riaz with interest. Especially Boss Luo, he smiled and said, Don't worry. Your two sisters are fine. They will come to you soon. Really? How do you know? Helen quickly asked. Of course it's because they met. Boss Luo thought. They are in the bodies of the two squid monsters. The two sirens were probably trying to lure the monsters away to create a chance for Helen to escape, but they ended up in the monster's mouth. However, sirens were mythical creatures after all. Moreover, they had matured and had some means to protect themselves. Although they fell into the monsters' mouths, they turned themselves into giant cocoons and temporarily preserved themselves. However, the giant monster's stomach acid was corroding the cocoon. It wouldn't be long before the two sirens were melted. If the young girl, Lu Go, attacked and killed the two giant monsters, she would be able to do so. It was Boss Luo III who found the two sirens. He didn't arrange a place for them. Anyway, after they escaped, they would break out of the cocoons and come to find him. The reunion of the siren sisters was only a matter of time. On the other side, Riaz was secretly happy to get the news about Helen's sisters. However, he didn't notice that Master Karen. Professor Kim Karen's gaze seemed to be a bit strange. Master Karen quietly approached Riaz with a hint of ruthlessness in her eyes. Riaz, the heir appointed by the emperor. If he becomes a hostage, I will be safe, right? The crutch moved quietly. Found you, old man. A voice was heard. Then, the figure of the girl, Lu Gu, suddenly appeared in front of everyone. Master Karen's expression changed drastically. Without saying a word, she launched an attack and rushed toward Riaz. At the same time, Krypton Gold opened his mouth and muttered to himself, "Something's wrong. This script is wrong?" Hashtag 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 PS. Read the catch-up tomorrow. I don't know if I will transmigrate again tonight, so I won't post the time notice. Chapter 1710. Ever since the young lady Lu Ji's voice rang out and her arrival in an instant, everyone's reactions were different. The entire world was operating like the most intricate machine. Every part was operating independently, but they were also interconnected, participating in it. No one could see everything with a complete vision. But here, perhaps there were two pairs of eyes that were the exception. Riaz was not stupid. When Professor Kinkelan suddenly pounced on him and put on a determined look, Riaz immediately understood that this professor wanted to harm him. As for the reason, most of the time, the reason was actually right in front of his eyes. He did not notice Long Gang at first because Long Gang had his head down. Secondly, his attention was attracted by Luochio's news about Helen's sisters. But now that he saw it clearly, he instantly had a clearer picture in his mind. Facing Master Kim Kailuan's sudden attack, after all these flashed through his mind, Riaz's most direct reaction was to counterattack. Perhaps it was because he had been receiving beatings from Lyoga all this time, or he was born with a violent gene that he did not know about. A blue light flashed in Riaz's eyes. The moment Master Kim Kailuan's cane hit his body, he suddenly dodged and threw out his fist at an unusual speed. Dodging, and then returning to his original position, he threw out another punch. Master Kim Kailuan seemed to have slowed down at this time, while Riaz accelerated. His fist easily and directly hit Master Kim Kailuan's chest. Master Kim Kailuan's eyes flashed with a trace of disbelief. Riaz's sudden acceleration was like pressing the fast-forward button. The protective suit offset most of the impact, so Master Kim Kailuan did not feel much damage. Even the pain was quite light, but his body was forced to fly all the way back. There was no point of impact in the sea, so Master Kim Kailuan's body finally hit the rock wall behind him. After Riaz threw out a punch, he was stunned on the spot. He had a special feeling when he threw out the punch, but at this time, the strange power disappeared without a trace, as if it was an illusion. When the young girl, Lu Gu, saw this happen, her eyes flashed with a trace of approval. Her daily training during this period of time was not completely in vain. What is this? Riaz looked around in confusion, waiting for an explanation. But no one would explain anything to him. Kong Hai moved the moment Master Karen was hit. He swam towards Master Karen, who was smashed into the rock wall. As for Long Gang, without anyone supporting him, his body slowly sank. Helen nervously grabbed Riaz again. This time it was the corner of his shirt. Krypton Gold rolled his eyes, thinking about something. Boss Luo and Miss Maid, who were in the center of the storm, didn't seem to exist. But Miss Maid's eyes were fixed on Master Karen, as if the previous flick was not enough for her. The young girl, Lu Gu, directly charged towards Master Karen and coldly laughed. "Old man, I didn't plan on dealing with you so early. It's better to keep you alive. When I'm bored, I have destiny to relieve my boredom." Master Kailuan's face paled. Facing the silver moon witch, he knew that he had no chance of resisting. This girl seemed weak, but Master Kailuan suspected that she was like the ancient Lemurians, able to freely control the power of mana. "Kong Hai, help me." He looked at Kong Hai beside him, expecting something, but at the same time, he wasn't sure. He knew that Kong Hai was mysterious. At this time, he could only hope that this mysterious guy would help him at this critical moment for the sake of living together for so many years. Kong Hai didn't say anything, but his actions were the best answer. Go away! Lu Gu shouted angrily. But Kong Hai blocked her attack at this moment. It didn't seem to be easy, but it didn't seem to be strenuous either. It was a very straightforward and simple way. Kong Hai blocked Lu Ji's fist with his chest. Then, his whole body crashed into the rock wall. Large pieces of rock fell from the rock wall. This was obviously different from Riaz's attack. But soon, Kong Hai patted the mud on his body and slowly floated out. He didn't seem to be hurt at all. I underestimated you. The young girl, Crystal Song, put away her contempt. I've investigated you. Ever since you were born, you've always been mediocre. Did that old man Karen evade our pursuit? Kong Hai shook his head. He doesn't have that ability. I just entered your government's database and slightly modified my personal history. It'll make it easier for me. You? Lu Gu opened her mouth in surprise. How did he do it with the strict monitoring system that the royal government had set up in the underwater city? I don't want to develop a violent incident with you here, Kong Hai said calmly. The long gang that Master Karen took away will be returned to you. The things that he took will also be returned to you. Then we'll leave. Do you think I'll agree? Lu Gu chuckled. But Kong Hai said, why not? This should be the best choice. You get back what you originally had, and we won't be hurt. There won't be any bloodshed. This is good for both sides. I really don't know where that old man Karen found you. The girl snorted. You're really confident that there'll only be bloodshed if you resist me? I can't beat you. Kong Hai shook his head. I don't really learn anything about attacking, but I've studied your moves. The royal government's database has a lot of recordings of your move. I want to pay a price and escape from your hands. Isn't that infuriating? This guy spoke slowly and methodically as if every word was reasonable. He was trying to reason with her. I'm not interested in listening. Lu Gu snorted. If you think you can, then try. With that, a special mark appeared on the girl's forehead. Kong Hai was still calm. He quickly said, Professor, I shouldn't be able to hold on for long. If you want to escape, now is the time. Don't stay here and talk nonsense when you have the chance to escape. You really have a lot of nonsense. Master Karen almost vomited blood. He was so angry that he suffered internal injuries. But he didn't hesitate. He gritted his teeth and rushed towards the sinking dragon ridge. At this time, Lu Gu was already fighting with Kong Hai. She was completely suppressing him with brute force. But Kong Hai only defended and didn't attack. He kept pestering her like a fly, sticking and then running. You want to leave? No way. Seeing that Master Karen was about to take the opportunity to escape, Lu Gu snorted and said in a deep voice, Stop him. In an instant, the three flying tumblers, parked at the side, started moving at the same time and rushed towards Master Karen. Master Karen's expression immediately changed. These three Feituo were military models, and their speed was incomparable to ordinary civilian models. At this moment, Lyoga seemed to have released the Feituo's attack mode, and in an instant, the Feituo turned into a fierce beast. Master Karen was a battle master, but he couldn't help but be in a difficult situation. On the side, Riaz was secretly worried. But Kor Duojin secretly pulled his arm. He looked at Kor Duojin in confusion. Kor Duojin suddenly came up and gave him something. Riaz looked at it subconsciously. It was 2 flat metal boxes bigger than his palm. What's this? Do you want to know about your father? Kor Duojin lowered his voice and said, If you want to know, take these 2 keys and open this door. My father? Riaz was shocked. Kor Duojin quickly said, Don't ask me so much. I don't know either. I'm just passing on your emperor's words to you. It's up to you whether you want to do it or not. But this should be a good opportunity. No one is paying attention to you now. His Majesty? Riaz frowned. He ordered you. Don't ask. Kor Duojin shook his head. I only know this much. Riaz, do you believe me? Riaz nodded subconsciously, nodding affirmatively. Then go now. Don't hesitate. Kor Duojin said seriously, this is my only request to you. Okay. Riaz nodded again. He immediately climbed up and quickly added, Helen, you and Kor Duojin stay here and wait for me to come back. Helen's heart suddenly jumped. She was about to call out to Riaz, but she felt a chill enveloping her body. Her blood seemed to be frozen in an instant. She couldn't move. Lady, you'll be despised if you stop your man from doing something. It was Kor Duojin's voice. But it wasn't the voice she was familiar with. It was low, gloomy and sinister. Kong Hai's body suddenly flew out and hit the rock wall on the side. This time, the damage was even greater. And now, he was no longer unharmed. At least, there was blood flowing out from the corner of his mouth. I thought you had some skills. You're just SOSO. I told you, I can't beat you. Kong Hai shook his head. It's a pity you wasted your efforts. That old man Karen can't escape either. Lyoga sneered. At this moment, under the siege of 3, a flying serpent, Master Karen was in imminent danger. He couldn't find a chance to escape. Kong Hai sized her up and then lowered his hand. Lyoga thought he was going to do something, but unexpectedly, he raised his hands and said, All right, I surrender. Surrender? Lyoga thought she heard wrong. You don't believe me? Kong Hai asked calmly. Believe? You'd be a fool. Lyoga rushed up. But what made her stunned was that Kong Hai didn't plan to fight back at all. He let the girl's fist hit his chest. What kind of person was this? Lyoga couldn't help but have a strange feeling. After taking her attack head-on, Kong Hai's injuries worsened. But he still didn't plan to fight back. Lyoga suddenly felt powerless. But at this moment, the surrounding seawater suddenly began to roll. Lyoga was shocked and subconsciously looked up. She saw that Riaz had already climbed to the top of the huge door, where the huge emblem was. At this moment, Riaz's hands each grabbed a flat box. A burst of bright light suddenly emitted from the 2 boxes. In an instant, the 2 boxes were directly sucked into the grooves on the emblem, and embedded. The huge emblem lit up at this moment. At the same time, a crack of light broke open the door. It was obviously about to open. Why are the keys here? Lyoga's face flashed with a trace of disbelief. A ray of light shot out from the crack of the door. It immediately swept past Riaz and he instantly disappeared. But the ray of light didn't disappear. Instead, it swept through the entire crack at an even faster speed. It swept past Helen, and she also disappeared. Then, Master Karen, Longgang and Kong Hai weren't spared either. Finally, the ray of light swept in front of Lyoga. Her eyes flashed with a trace of fury, and she quickly retreated. But the ray of light was even faster. In the end, she was also swallowed by the ray of light and disappeared in front of the door. Then, the ray of light swept again and swept past Luochio and Miss Maid. Boss Luo and Miss Maid didn't disappear. However, Boss Luo directly grabbed the servant girl's hand at this time and floated into the door. At the same time, a few figures barged into this place. They were Madame Kaya and her group, who had been chasing after Lyoga but were slightly slower than her. The ray of light finally swept past Madame Kaya and her group. In the end, the emblem on the door gradually dimmed. The crack in front of the door returned to darkness. After a while, something suddenly emerged from the mud. It was Krypton Gold. A figure slowly floated out from the crack. Krypton Gold's eyes lit up. He saw a person silently waiting outside the crack. Louis XXXIX. Krypton Gold floated over with a smile. Isn't this His Majesty the Emperor of Underwater City? What a coincidence, His Majesty also came here to play. Ba Sha, the Emperor of Underwater City calmly called out. Krypton Gold shrugged. Then, his body began to crack and shed a layer of skin. After that, Prince Ba Sha of the Siren tribe appeared in front of the Emperor with a smile. Your Majesty, I've completed what you asked me to do. But you didn't tell me beforehand that Lyoga's sister Huang would appear here. Louis XXXIX shook his head. I didn't expect that the person called Kong Hai would bring people here. Apart from Riaz, the rest of them came here by accident. Alright, if you say so, then so be it. Who asked you to be the emperor? Prince Ba Sha spread his hands. Look, this time, you did everything behind Liuga's sister Huang's back. You can even lie to my traitorous sister Huang. Of course, I believe that your majesty must have something you don't want to tell me, right? Who said I was hiding from Liuga? Louis XXXIX looked at Prince Ba Sha expressionlessly. Siren Prince chuckled lightly and said, If I didn't guess wrongly, Royal Sister Lu Go probably didn't know beforehand that you secretly stuffed the key that belongs to you into Long Gang's body and brought it to this place, right? You asked me to help you send this young man named Riaz inside. So, you probably don't want Liuga's sister Huang to know that you're doing these things? If you arranged for Kinkelin to do the same for the diplomatic group, you know he'll definitely make things difficult and create trouble, or the key will be stolen by Kinkelin, then no one will know that this door was opened. Then, it's my turn. As he spoke, Prince Ba Sha's skin began to slowly change. Soon, he turned into Riaz's appearance. Next, it's my turn. Riaz, it's your turn, right? His Majesty casually glanced at the Siren Prince. What do you want to know? What's inside this door? Prince Ba Sha turned back to his original appearance and asked with narrowed eyes. His Majesty let out a sigh and slowly said, Demons and our origin. A strange look flashed across Prince Ba Sha's eyes, and he couldn't help but murmur to himself, So, the legend is true. I regret it, Your Majesty, I shouldn't have followed you in. No need, I can send you on your way. His Majesty waved his hand coldly. A blue light flashed, and in the next moment, the blue light turned into a blue longsword, piercing through Prince Ba Sha's chest and splitting him in half. Prince Ba Sha's eyes widened at this moment. They widened and then split open. The smell of blood filled the air. Soon, the deep-sea predators came and began to enjoy the fresh meat. Louis XXXIX watched as Prince Ba Sha's body was eaten until only bones were left. I quite like this young man named Krypton Gold. I'll take it as revenge for him. His Majesty said indifferently, As for you, since an accident happened and Liuga has entered the door, you don't need to pretend to be anyone else. A light beam fell on His Majesty from above. His body slowly rose up. It was indeed attracted by a sapphire above. His Majesty quickly boarded the control room of a sapphire and waved his hand, saying, Return. Prepare to conquer the Siren clan. Within one day, I'll wipe out the Siren royal court. Riaz woke up because of a dazzling light. When he woke up, he only knew that he was lying on a large piece of golden sand, and beside him was Helen. Helen was in a coma. This is Russell. Russell sounds came. Riaz looked at it in a daze. This was a scene that he could only see in the museum. It was a record of the ocean before the Lemurian civilization sank into the sea. Blue sky, white clouds, and sea. He faced the sea at this moment. The seawater washed up to his feet. It was a very real feeling. This is the ground? Yeah, Riaz, you're awake. At this moment, a familiar voice came from behind Riaz. He suddenly shivered and hurriedly turned around, only to see his big brother and big sister walking over together. The two walked barefoot on the beach. Boss Luo only wore a pair of beach pants and held a swimming ring in his hand. As for Miss Maid, she wore a white two-piece swimsuit and a pure white round hat. She looked exactly like a tourist. Looking at the appearance of Boss Luo and Miss Maid, a sense of déjà vu arose spontaneously. He remembered that the last time was in the hospital when he just woke up. Hashtag PS. 4283. Chapter 1711. Riaz had a lot of questions in his mind at this time, but for some reason, when he was about to ask them, they became such words. Are you going for a swim? There was also a swimming pool in Underwater City, but it was man-made. Don't think that the residents of Underwater City didn't need to swim for entertainment. After all, not many people were willing to swim in the dark, deep sea. We swam past it, Boss Luo said with a smile. Ah. Riaz opened his mouth. What the hell do you mean by swam past? You've been awake for a long time. At this time, the little siren, Helen, also woke up slowly. She saw the huge beach and sea in front of her and couldn't help but be startled. Riaz. Where is this? I don't know. Riaz shook his head. I just remember another light shot out, and then I woke up in this place. Maybe this is the world behind the stone door? This is indeed the world behind the stone door. Luocio gave the answer at this time. Well, for you, it's more or less like this. Is there anything else? Riaz asked subconsciously. What is it for you? Luocio thought for a while and said, probably, it's the remains of an old friend. This should be a test site left by him. Test site. Riaz lowered his head and seemed to think of something. Test site? Miss Maid chuckled at this time, pointed at the sea in front of them, and said, these things. Riaz and Helen subconsciously turned to look at the sea. At this moment, above the sea in the distance, a huge water column suddenly rose into the sky. Then, they saw a long, thick, huge, terrifying creature with the head of a beast, like the race track of the world's snake, poked out half of its body from the sea. But it quickly dived into the sea again, and then rushed out again. It kept churning above the sea with a terrifying momentum. What kind of creature is this? It's so huge. Riaz's shock was completely shown on his face. This huge creature was probably bigger than the sapphire that they took on this voyage. It should be some creatures that have been genetically modified. Miss Maid glanced at him. There are many characteristics on his body that can be found on some known creatures. Such a gigantic creature would undoubtedly be the overlord of the ocean. Perhaps we can call it the Sea King species. But perhaps an aquatic fusion beast would be more appropriate. Who could create such a terrifying creature? The shock on Riaz's face deepened. Maybe we'll find out if we keep going forward. Boss Luo released the air from the swimming ring in his hand and looked deep into the land. Only now did Riaz discover that in the depths of the vast mountain range behind this huge beach, there was actually a huge tower that reached the sky. This giant tower was not made of stone, instead, it had a metallic luster. Riaz didn't know what kind of construction technology was used to be able to support this sky-high tower without collapsing. He suddenly felt his own insignificance. Let's go and take a look. Boss Luo looked at Riaz. The Underwater City's emperor made so many arrangements and sent you here. There must be something he wants you to do. His Majesty? Riaz recalled what Cor Dorigen said to him before he opened the door. Cor Dorigen gave him the key to open the door and claimed that it was the Underwater City's emperor's intention. Here, he could find his father. If not for this reason, Riaz wouldn't open the door so decisively. Brother Luo, have you been here before? Riaz asked subconsciously. Luoqiu shook his head. No, it's my first time here. I think so. This was uncertainty after affirmation. Riaz couldn't tell whether he had or not, but Riaz felt that this brother Luo didn't seem to know either. But he had more questions, so he hurriedly caught up with Boss Luo's footstep. Helen followed him subconsciously, but Miss Maid came to her side at this time. Helen was stunned, and a sense of vigilance suddenly appeared on her face. Unexpectedly, Miss Maid said at this time, "It's too easy to expose your thoughts on your face. You'll be at a disadvantage when facing the person you like." What? Helen couldn't help but be stunned. Miss Maid chuckled. Sirens who are in love can spit out sirens' tears. This is a very good secret medicine material. If you're willing to give me one, I'll help you catch Riaz's heart. How about that? How about I make Riaz like you more? Miss Maid whispered. The siren girl's face was slightly red, but she didn't shy. No need. Big Sister said that you can only use sincerity to exchange for sincerity. Fake ones are all bubbles. With that, Helen quickened her pace and quickly caught up with Riaz. Miss Maid looked at this romantic girl and showed a smile. I seem to be regarded as a witch who seduces Miss Mermaid. Miss Maid's eyes narrowed instantly. Daughter of the sea. She was fond of beautiful things, and she had always been like that. Naturally, this beautiful and moving girl was also in this category. Moreover, this girl was, without any threat, unlike a certain female insect who liked to cheat and be in heat. There were strangely shaped stones all around, and there were red indentations on the stones. They were all different symbols like some kind of text. The ground was covered with weeds. Obviously, this place hadn't been cleaned for a long time. The four people woke up separately. Lyoga, Kong Hai, Master Karen, and Long Gang woke up. They woke up almost at the same time. The moment they woke up, Master Karen quickly joined Kong Hai and vaguely confronted Lyoga. As for the unconscious Long Gang, he was sitting on the ground and looking at a huge stone in front of him, motionless. Are you okay, Kong Hai? Master Karen asked in a low voice. Kong Hai's face was pale, and there were bloodstains at the corner of his mouth. He had seen the horror of the Silver Moon Witch, and now he could only fight with all his might. But Lyoga seemed to have lost interest in attacking the two. She silently looked at the huge tower in the mountains. Where is this place? Master Karen asked in a low voice. The moment he woke up, he had already discovered that this place was almost the same as the land world recorded in the literature. The fresh air with the smell of grass, the soft soil, the blue sky, and the boundless mountains. Birds, trees, flowers in the distance, these were the images that existed in the museum of the underwater city, but now they appeared in front of him. The origin of civilization. Lyoga glanced at Master Karen indifferently. The place where the Lemurians were born. What did you say? Master Karen frowned. The place where the Lemurians were born? How is that possible? Before the Sunken Sea era, the great sage Leeds, one of the last 7 sages, recorded in the book Research on the Origin of Civilization. The ancestors of the Lemurians were first born in a canyon. But as time passed, the canyon should have disappeared in the long process of the Earth's crust movement. If you say so, then so be it. Lyoga shook her head. I'm not interested in wasting time with you here. As she spoke, Lyoga bent her legs slightly and then jumped away. She jumped on a huge stone and then used it as a stepping board to move forward, disappearing in a few moments. Master Karen looked at Lyoga's departure in disbelief. She really let us go? She said she didn't want to waste time, Kong Hai replied. Staying here and continuing to fight with us is obviously a waste of time for her. Because I can still hold her back for a while. Although I can't beat her, it will still take some effort for her to kill me. Also, she doesn't seem to be able to enter the state of sudden burst of power like before. She must be worried. How do you know? Master Karen frowned. Kong Hai said matter-of-factly. With the same setting, if I were her, we wouldn't have the chance to open our eyes. The reason why she didn't make a move is naturally because she is worried. No matter what, we're out of danger for now. Master Karen shook his head and then asked, This is the world behind the stone door? You said you came from this place. Now, do you feel anything? Yes. Kong Hai nodded. What is it? Master Karen hurriedly asked. Kong Hai thought for a moment and said, I feel that it's very inconvenient to bring you and the current state of Longgang. Master Karen was silent for a moment before slowly saying, Since that's the case, we need to help each other. That's true. Kong Hai nodded. I have a few broken ribs, and my injuries are quite serious. I do need some labor. So heavy, why didn't you say so? Master Karen hurriedly said. Now that I say it. Kong Hai's body fell to the ground and then fainted. So he had been holding on by force all this time? Damn it. I'm the one with the heaviest burden. Master Karen immediately stomped his feet. Looking at the half-crippled Kong Hai and the retarded Longgang, he felt that he was really old and couldn't carry them anymore. Right at this moment something approached. Master Karen was indeed a master of combat. Although his body had become weak, his senses were still sharp. At this moment, a rustling sound came from all directions. He hurriedly clenched the crutch in his hand and looked around vigilantly. At this moment, a black shadow suddenly scuttled onto a huge rock. Master Kailuan turned around and looked at him in the eye. He was shocked. At this moment, several dozens. In just a short moment, the surrounding boulders were filled with figures. Master Karen gasped. This was a humanoid primate that looked like an ape, but unlike an ape, this creature had 6 strong arms. In an instant, the 6-armed apes on the surrounding boulders pounced forward and drowned Master Karen. Hoyalu tsk. Woo 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 woo. Miss Maid reached out her hand and picked some weird light blue and purple fruits from a low fruit tree. Just as Riaz was about to tell her not to eat the strange fruits in the wild, Miss Maid had already taken a small bite. The sweetness is good. Miss Maid smiled and said, "It tastes like pineapple and has high nutritional content." With this, Miss Maid handed the fruit to Boss Luo. Oh, the two of them had changed back to their normal clothes. As for when they changed their clothes, Riaz couldn't remember. It was as if it had happened all of a sudden. It was just like how they said they had already swum, but how they swum and what they did while swimming were like secrets that he had no way of knowing. "It feels like we are on an outing." Riaz looked at the 2 elder brothers and sisters with a wry smile. He couldn't relax at this moment. It wasn't an easy journey. There were all kinds of weird plants on the road, some of which were even quite aggressive. He saw a beetle-like creature with a height of more than 3 meters was directly melted by a lantern-like plant. But at least it was a close call. Boss Luo's destination was the huge metal tower in the mountains. That was the right direction. "I'm afraid it will take us a long time to reach the huge metal tower. It's too far." Riaz couldn't help but frown. "I calculated the time, it's been almost 2 hours since we set off, but the distance isn't close at all. It would be great if there was a flying serpent here. Then let's see if there's any transportation," Luochio suddenly said. Riaz looked around. Where would the transportation come from in such a dense forest? The most basic rickshaw that was built at the last minute. Riaz, try taking 2 steps back. Boss Luo blinked and said. Riaz was startled and didn't know what was going on, but he still took 2 steps back subconsciously. When he took the second step, he found that he seemed to have stepped on something, and then the ground trembled slightly. In an instant, the ground directly split open, and then something slowly stretched out. It was a lift gate. "Huh? Brother Luo, how did you know?" Riaz looked at the lift gate in surprise. He finally felt a trace of civilization in this primitive place. "Me? My luck is better." Luochio smiled casually and then said, "See if you can open this gate." "Me?" Riaz was startled again. The lift gate was lowered. How was he going to open it? Break the gate with brute force? Riaz subconsciously glanced at Helen, and Helen also looked at him blankly. Riaz scratched his head and finally walked in front of the gate. In an instant, a ray of light shot out from the gate and then swept across Riaz's body from top to bottom. Then there was a beep sound, followed by the sound of air pressure spraying. The gate opened just like that. "This isn't just luck anymore, right?" Riaz muttered. "It feels like it's arranged very clearly. Let's go in and explore." Boss Luo smiled excitedly. ######PS1. Everyone has worked hard this year. Thank you for your company for the whole year of 2019. Next year, I'll continue to write. PS2. I'll read it tomorrow. Let me spend New Year's with my family. PS3. Omega? Chapter 1712. What surprised Riaz was that the underground space that they entered through the lift gate was far larger than he imagined. The lift gate finally stopped, and the passage in front of them lit up as if it had just been connected to a power source. Riaz jumped out of the lift gate first and found that the passage was not long, but there were many tools on the walls on both sides of the passage. There were all kinds of tools, and he could not name them. He just felt curious. Who created such a place? Riaz asked in amazement. How big is the land here? It seems to cover the entire land, Boss Luo said casually. Cover the entire land. When they were on the ground, Riaz could not even see the end of the land. So, there was another artificial space of the same size under this huge land. This place was far bigger than the undersea city. But we haven't seen anyone yet? Riaz asked subconsciously. Who knows? Luoqiu smiled and said, history exists everywhere. As long as we don't participate in it, it's basically impossible to know what happened in it. Perhaps we can only find the fragments of the answer at the front of the road. Exploring little by little will make it interesting to explore. Riaz was stunned, then smiled bitterly. I don't have such a good mood to explore now. Besides, if this underground space is as big as the one on the ground with our destination, it's obvious that we can't see our destination from here. On the ground, they could see the existence of the giant metal tower at the end of their line of sight. But here, they could not even tell the direction. But Riaz was soon stunned by the next discovery. It was something at the end of the long corridor in front of the lift gate. It was a track with no end in sight. And at the exit of the corridor, there was an oval train with a wide middle and an oval front and back. Standing in front of the train, Riaz opened his mouth. He subconsciously looked at Luoqiu, but he saw the other party give him an encouraging look again. Riaz opened his mouth, then sighed. He simply opened the lift gate and walked directly to the door of the train. A light beam shot out again, then scanned Riaz's whole body from top to bottom again. Then, the door of the train began to slowly open. At the same time, there was a slight noise from the inside of the train. At this time, it started directly. Why can I open the things here? Riaz couldn't help but mutter to himself at first. He might have been a little confused, but now, no matter how slow he was, he would have understood some things. Moreover, he wasn't slow in the first place. These things seemed to recognize me. Riaz thought of a possibility and asked, Brother Luo, could it be that His Majesty built this place? Why would you think that? Boss Luo asked curiously. Riaz frowned and said, It was Krypton who gave me the key to open the door. He said it was His Majesty's will. Actually, I've been wondering if His Majesty's real purpose in coming to the Somna Trench was to let me enter the stone gate. Look, if this place was built by His Majesty, wouldn't it make sense? I was scanned a few times to verify my identity, and then it was convenient for me. This was all arranged by His Majesty. But at this moment, a mature woman with long green hair and wearing a silver robe suddenly appeared inside the train. Hello, Your Excellency Shepherd. I'm the attendant of this train, Songxing. I'm happy to serve you. This woman with long green hair had a layer of hazy light on her body. She looked calm, and her smile was like a spring breeze. However, she wasn't a real person, but a projection. Riaz pointed at himself subconsciously and asked, What did you call me? Your Excellency Shepherd. The train attendant named Songxing smiled and said, After testing, your DNA matches the shepherd in the database. May I ask, where do you plan to go? We want to go to the original metal tower. But what is a shepherd? Riaz asked subconsciously. The destination is the central, right? We'll start planning the route now. Please wait a moment. Songxing didn't answer Riaz's second question. She seemed to have entered some kind of calculation mode. In front of her, a virtual route map appeared. The route map was even more complicated than the circuit board used to guide the magic energy on the serpent. It could dazzle anyone who looked at it. But soon, a complete route began to light up, and Songxing said, The route has been calculated. The travel time is 4,908 seconds. Please take your seat, Your Excellency Shepherd. Along with Songxing's voice, Long rows of seats were suddenly put down on both sides of the train. Riaz opened his mouth and said, "Wait, you haven't told me what a shepherd is." "A shepherd is naturally a worker who herds the animals," Songxing said slowly. "A shepherd's main job is to watch over and take care of the test subjects in the test field. They are also responsible for recording all the data of the test subject." Riaz thought of the terrifying creatures and plants outside. With the size of this mysterious place, who knew how many creatures there were in this place? He couldn't help but ask in shock, "How many shepherds are there in this place?" "Currently, there's only you, Your Excellency Shepherd," Riaz hurriedly said. "Only me? How is that possible? Are there no other shepherds here?" "There are," Songxing said slowly, "but they left a long time ago. You are the second shepherd to come back in such a long time." "Who was the first?" Riaz's breathing quickened slightly. He seemed to have thought of something. Songxing pointed with her finger, and a virtual image slowly appeared in front of Riaz. A figure appeared, and Riaz saw the figure of the Emperor of Underwater City, Louis XXXIX. "It's really, Your Majesty." After a slight tremor, Kong Hai gradually woke up, and then found himself trapped in a huge cage. Inside the cage there were also Master Karen and Long Gang. As for this huge cage, it was transported in a rather primitive way. It was a simple cart made of wood. The wheel hub was not completely polished, so when it was pushed, it was inevitably bump. "How did we get caught by these six-armed apes?" After grasping the current situation, Kong Hai directly asked the question. Master Karen sighed. He also wanted to know why he was caught by these creatures. Looking at these six-armed apes, Master Karen knew that these creatures were not very intelligent. Although their intelligence is not very high, they are very strong and agile. Master Karen pointed out part of the reason. He knew that with Kong Hai's level, these words were enough for him to understand why he was in a cage. "In other words, you were caught by a group of apes, right?" Master Karen snorted lightly. His intention was to let Kong Hai understand in his heart, not to say it out loud. "How's your injury?" Master Karen simply changed the topic. "Not very good, but not very bad. I need some time to recover." Kong Hai thought for a moment, then looked ahead with a strange expression on his face. "It seems that the ape tribe is about to arrive." Master Karen followed Kong Hai's gaze. There was a canyon in front of them. Only one side of the canyon was open as the entrance. On the mountain in the canyon, there were a large number of excavated caves. This was probably the habitat of these apes, because at this moment they saw many six-armed apes standing in front of those big and small holes, looking into the distance. The cages followed the cart and slowly entered the canyon. Immediately, a large tribe that resembled a kingdom of apes appeared in front of Master Karen and Kong Hai. At this time, more six-armed apes swarmed in and surrounded the cage. They looked at Master Karen and the other two in the cage. They seemed to have their own language, but due to the language barrier, Master Karen and Kong Hai couldn't understand the meaning of these apes for the time being. "Perhaps they are treating us as food?" Master Karen could not help but frown. In the current situation, this was the only way he could guess. There was no way to confirm this guess. Soon, Master Karen and the other two were sent to a large cave. From here on, the apes that were transporting them suddenly changed. This new batch of apes walked out of the cave, and what surprised Master Karen and Kong Hai was that although these apes also had 6 arms, they were wearing high-level equipment. A sense of disharmony arose spontaneously, especially for Master Karen. He even felt like he was looking at a primitive man wearing the magical equipment of an underwater city. But after being sent into the cave, this sense of disharmony became even stronger. At this moment, the scene before Master Karen and Kong Hai suddenly changed. There was a large space inside the cave, and the walls were made of metal. It was like a huge warehouse. They even saw many huge machines neatly stacked in a corner of the warehouse. Many of these machines were covered in moss, and there were even weeds growing on some of them. This was a trace of civilization that was different from the magical civilization in the underwater city. It was similar to the technology on Sapphire, but obviously much more advanced. In the cage, Master Karen gradually became frightened until a new batch of six-armed apes appeared in front of them. At this moment, one of the six-armed apes was almost half the height of an ordinary six-armed ape, and four of its 6 arms were holding weapons similar to spears and cannons. It suddenly walked up, knocked on the cage, and said, "I am the kingdom's General Bachelou. From now on, you are my property." Master Karen and Kong Hai instantly looked at each other. They could hear every word clearly. Even the meaning of these words when they were connected together was very clear to them. The problem was, they had obviously never learned the syllables of these words. "Is it strange that I can communicate with you about this?" The so-called kingdom's general, Bachelou, pointed at a metal collar around his neck. "This one. Our king gave me this artifact that allows me to communicate with everyone." "Where the hell is this place?" Master Karen directly grabbed the bars of the cage. Since they could communicate, they could at least figure out the current situation. "This is the territory of the most powerful general of the Boulder Kingdom, Bachelou." At this time, the huge six-armed ape hammered its chest. "Well, hairless monkeys, from now on, you are my General Bachelou's slaves. Lock up these monkeys and the previous batch of monkeys." Hulalolulalalala tut tut. The rest of the apes didn't have Bachelou's metal collar on their necks, and the scene suddenly returned to normal. Master Karen hurriedly wanted to say something, and slapped the cage hard. However, 2 of the ape-like warriors who were in charge of escorting Master Karen suddenly extended 2 forks into the cage and held Master Karen up. Moreover, the forks even released powerful electric current, electrocuting Master Karen and making him lose consciousness at once. This time, it was Master Karen's turn to slowly wake up. He opened his eyes and saw the iron net above his head. At the same time, several 6-armed apes were holding weapons, standing on the iron net and looking down from time to time. He was now trapped underground. Master Karen quickly understood the situation, and hurriedly got up, looking around. "How long have I been unconscious?" Master Karen rubbed his dizzy head. He knew Kong Hai was beside him, so he asked directly. "Not long, about half an hour." Master Karen didn't feel better, so he had to ask again, "How much of your memory have you recovered? Are you really from this place?" Kong Hai was silent at this time, and after a long while, he calmly said, "I remember some." "What did you remember?" The master suddenly felt less dizzy. Kong Hai said, "There weren't so many apes in the past." "What do I need you for?" Master Karen asked seriously. Kong Hai also said, "I don't need you now." Master Karen sighed. "I'm not in the mood to argue with you here. Anyway, who's that guy over there?" Master Karen had already noticed a few figures gathered in a corner of the dungeon when he woke up. Because it was too dark, he clearly couldn't see their faces clearly. "It's an old acquaintance of yours, Professor," Kong Hai said directly. "An old acquaintance?" Master Karen was subconsciously startled, only to see the figures in the distance begin to move, slowly walking over. Not long after, Master Karen clearly saw their appearance. Kaya. The one in the lead was Madame Kaya. In front of the trunk of a huge tree, the young girl Lu Ji's expression became more and more unsightly. Before this, a ray of light had swept back and forth from her head to the bottom of her feet, and then from the bottom of her feet to the top of her head, but the gate in front of her didn't respond. Enough! The young girl seemed to have reached the limit of her patience. Without another word, she directly and violently stabbed her hands into the gate, and then tore it open bit by bit. Chapter 17:13. In the underground cage, Master Karen's side and Madame Kaya's side did not mock each other, nor did they attack as soon as they saw each other. Instead, they were extremely silent. Above them, only the sounds of the 6-armed apes in charge of guarding them could be heard as they moved. This continued until the six-armed ape's footsteps gradually became softer. Afterwards, there was the sound of snoring. The guards had already begun snoring in front of everyone. After all, there's still beasts that haven't developed much. That was what Master Karen thought. Right now, what they needed to deal with was the problem of how to get along with Madame Kaya's side. They had to work together and escape from the apes first. That was the best plan right now. Kaya, this place is clearly different from Undersea City, Master Karen said slowly. What are you trying to say? Madame Kaya asked indifferently. Master Kaya said, here, it doesn't matter what position you hold in the kingdom's government. It doesn't matter who I am either. Here, we are nothing more than prisoners of these wild beasts. Madame Kaya said nothing. The soldiers behind her remained silent as well. Let's form an alliance before we leave this place, Master Karen directly said. Master Karen said directly, once we leave this place, we'll still be the same as before. However, before that, we need to help each other. What do you think? All right, Madame Kaya replied without much thought. As for whether the two sides actually intended to follow through with this temporary alliance, that was unknown. The interaction that followed seemed to jump to an inconceivable stage. Kong Hai looked at the conversation between Madame Kaya and Master Karen in silence, as if they were old friends. This was a huge challenge for him, who had always been honest and straightforward. Even though he had lived with Master Karen for a very long time, and had even accompanied Master Karen from his youth to his twilight years, in Master Karen's eyes, Kong Hai was still like a blank piece of paper with human nature. No matter how much time had passed, the thick colors of humanity were unable to leave a single mark on this blank piece of paper. The master did not know if he had changed, or if he had become stubborn, or if Kong Hai was the most stubborn and unwilling to change. Many times, he felt that Kong Hai was not human. How could a normal person not age after decades? However, now was not the time to ponder Kong Hai's question. Master Karen was busy discussing something with Madame Kaya. We didn't arrive here much earlier than you did, Madame Kaya said with a frown. We basically didn't manage to find out much. But before you were caught, a group of monkeys were taken away from here. You mean monkeys? Not an ape? Monkey, Madame Kaya said calmly. Master Karen said, the largest ape called itself the General of the Boulder Kingdom. Generally speaking, if there was no war, it was very difficult for a civilization to have a military function. General Bachelot had also mentioned monkeys. It seemed that there were two opposing forces in this place. One was the Boulder Kingdom, and the other was perhaps a country made up of monkeys. It's a pity that we can't communicate with these apes normally. Otherwise, we wouldn't be so passive. Master Karen could not help but glance at the retarded Long Gang when he reached there. He sighed. If Long Gang hadn't been reduced to this state, we might have been able to communicate with these wild beasts properly. A warrior of the underwater city immediately frowned. What? Is this criminal able to communicate with these wild beasts? Master Karen said indifferently, didn't Kaya tell you? Only then did Madame Kaya say slowly, I heard that Long Gang has a special ability. He can communicate with most creatures in the deep sea through his mind. He can even command the fish in the deep sea. How could there be such a thing? The soldiers were shocked. Madame Kaya nodded. She looked at Long Gang and said after some thought, indeed. Long Gang's ability is rather effective in resolving our current communication problem. As she said that, she directly arrived before Long Gang and crouched down. She suddenly pressed down on Long Gang's head and pushed aside the hair on the back of his neck. What are you trying to do? Master Karen immediately grabbed Madame Kaya's wrist. Madame Kaya said indifferently, there's a nerve disruption device implanted in the back of his head, which is why he's always in a state of confusion. I have the authority to suspend the device. Of course, if he doesn't cooperate, I don't mind letting him continue to be muddle-headed. I knew it. With Long Gang's drug resistance and mental resistance, How could he be so easily tortured to the point of losing his mind? Master Karen sighed at this moment. He looked at Madame Kaya with mixed feelings and suddenly said, "Wait a moment. I have something to tell you. You can decide if you want to remove the restrictions on Longgang." Madame Kaya walked to a corner with Master Karen and began to speak softly. At this moment, Madame Kaya said coldly, "What do you want to say?" Master Karen said seriously, "You can remove the restrictions on Longgang, but it's best if you don't tell him that you're a spy for the kingdom after that." Madame Kaya could not help but frown. Master Karen said, "You see, in this way, Longgang will still regard you as a member of Destiny. In that case, he won't take too many precautions in this matter. It'll make it easier for us to escape. You've been a spy for so many years. Don't you know Longgang's personality? Once he learns that you've been lying to him all these years, he probably won't compromise just to escape." "So?" Master Karen sighed, "You've been a spy for so many years anyway, so a bit more time won't make a difference. You have to act according to the situation. You know what to do." "I hope you don't play any tricks," Madame Kaya sneered before walking towards Longgang again. Master Karen sighed slowly. He had allowed Madame Kaya to continue being Kaya to save himself some trouble. How was he going to make Madame Kaya believe that he had been brainwashed by the Emperor, and how was he going to appease Longgang? How were the two of them going to get along? These matters could affect their escape plan, so it was better to hide this matter for now and sort it out later. Madame Kaya had not lost any of her memories anyway. She just believed that everything she had done in the past had been done by a spy from Destiny. All she had to do now was pretend to be Kaya from Destiny. It was nothing difficult at all. "I'm basically taking the big picture into consideration," Master Karen thought to herself. Before long, Madame Kaya had unlocked the device behind Longgang's neck. However, the device was still there and had not been removed. The device was completely connected to Longgang's spinal cord. Once it was forcefully removed, it would probably cause half of Longgang's body to be paralyzed or even die. "All right, he'll wake up soon." After doing all that, Madame Kaya said indifferently to Master Karen and Kong Hai, "Also, I've already instructed these subordinates, for now, they'll pretend to be outer members of Destiny. As for how to explain the current situation, it'll be up to you." "You've been a great help, Kaya," Master Karen smiled rather unpleasantly. However, Kong Hai said at this moment, "Actually, explaining the current situation won't affect Longgang's judgment. Since escaping is the most important thing, you can obviously let go of the things you've lost. There's no need for you to put on an act." "What do you know?" Master Karen said in exasperation. "No human is completely rational. Humans will always be swayed by their emotions. Don't treat everyone like you, child." Kong Hai shook his head and walked to a corner, sitting down. They no longer paid any attention to the young man. They were all waiting for Longgang to wake up. At this moment, Kong Hai suddenly took off his shoes and pulled out a palm-sized crystal plate that looked like a circuit board from the bottom of his shoe. This was something that Boss Luo had casually given to him on Sapphire out of joy. Kong Hai stared at the crystal circuit board in a rather daze. Suddenly, Kong Hai seemed to think of something and opened his hand. At this moment, a crack suddenly appeared on his palm. Not only was there no blood flowing out from the crack, but it was also unusually neat. Kong Hai even saw a slot in the crack. He directly inserted the crystal circuit board into the slot on his palm. Afterwards, his palm slowly closed. In the end, not a single mark was left behind. At the same time, Kong Hai heard a voice in his head. "Found usable plugin." Reading. From the very beginning, no one had noticed Kong Hai's abnormality. It was as if he had been forgotten. In particular, when Longgang's gaze gradually cleared up, all their attention was on him. All of their attention was gathered on Longgang. In the end, Longgang shook his head and said in confusion, "Master Kaya? Why are you here?" I should have been captured by the Silvermoon Witch. As he said that, Long Gang suddenly grabbed Madame Kai Ya's arm and said nervously, "Has Professor Josher been rescued? What about the Fei competition? What time is it now?" "Don't worry, Josher is fine." "He's fine," Madame Kaya said softly. "Your efforts haven't been in vain. However, many things happened afterwards. Let the master tell you about it." Master Karen glanced at Madame Kaya. What should he say? As expected of a woman? She had entered this state a little too quickly. Looking at Long Gang's questioning gaze, Master Karen sighed and said, "After you were captured, the kingdom's government imprisoned you. This time, the kingdom's government plans on using you to exchange with the sirens." "Using me to exchange with the sirens?" Long Gang frowned. "Why don't I have any recollection of this?" "Your mind has probably always been restricted," Master Karen said quickly. "This time, the kingdom's government plans on exterminating you. They've implanted some terrifying virus in your body and plan on sending you to the Sirens' Court to exterminate them." "They agreed?" Long Gang's expression changed slightly. "They agreed." Master Karen nodded. "It was even a royal siren who came forward to make the deal. Long Gang, I know you've always maintained a relationship with the Siren clan, but I didn't expect them to value you so much." "Master," Long Gang said formally, "please believe me. I truly want to liberate the enslaved citizens of the underwater city. As for my relationship with the Siren's Court, I'll definitely tell you everything when the time is right. Let's not talk about that for now." Master Karen waved his hand. "The problem we're facing right now is that Kaya and I came up with this plan to rescue you. In reality, during the handover, we managed to successfully rescue you with Kaya during the chaos. However, unfortunately, we were swept into this strange place as we fled." What followed next was what he saw and heard after entering the stone door. After listening to Master Karen's description, Long Gang fell silent for a very long time before suddenly asking sternly, "Is it really the Somna Trench? Is there something wrong?" Master Karen asked in surprise, "Do you know about this stone door and this strange world?" Long Gang shook his head. "No, I don't know. I'm just curious about the Somna Trench. Moreover, from what you've said, why have we never heard of such a stone door in the trench?" "Yeah." Master Karen glanced at Madame Kaya, intentionally or otherwise. "It looks like the kingdom's government, the Emperor of the underwater city, really does have many terrifying methods that we don't know about. Oh right, there's still a virus box in your body. I've been unable to remove it for you along the way. Can you take a look?" "There's nothing in my body." Long Gang shook his head before touching the back of his neck. "Apart from this thing. But it shouldn't be easy to remove it either. It should be a device used to restrict me." "Kaya removed it for you." Master Karen nodded. "In order to save you, she sacrificed a lot to sneak into the handover. Do you really not have the virus box on you?" "I don't," Long Gang shook his head. "I know my body's condition very well. Apart from this device on the back of my neck, there's nothing else in my body." "That's strange," Master Karen said in surprise. "I've been bringing you along the way. What's going on? I didn't remove it for you, so how did it suddenly vanish from your body?" "Perhaps it's already been removed by the royal siren," Madame Kaya suddenly said. Madame Kaya said all of a sudden, "The Dragon Ridge has indeed been handed over to the royal sea demons. Moreover, the sea demons disappeared before our eyes for a while before the squid monster was attracted over. Long Gang has very powerful recovery abilities. Although it hasn't been for long, it's enough for his wounds to heal." Master Karen could not help but ask in doubt, "Kaya, did the kingdom really implant a virus box in Long Gang? Didn't you see it with your own eyes?" Madame Kaya said indifferently. In reality, she had personally ordered for the virus box to be implanted. "Good, since the virus box isn't with me, it's a good thing." Long Gang waved his hand and interrupted. "Let's talk about how it was removed from my body in the future. Now we have to think of a way to leave this place. With that said, Long Gang walked under a six-armed ape that was sleeping on the iron net. He stared at the other party. His pupils gradually had a strange color. At this moment, Kong Hai suddenly opened his eyes. Analysis completed. Beginning installation of plug-in progress, 1%, why is it? His Majesty? In the train carriage, Riaz looked in shock at the image provided by Tsang Xing, the first person to return after leaving? Was this experimentation ground created by the Lemurians before the Sunken Sea era? He could only imagine in this way. This was the most reasonable deduction that he could make with all the knowledge he had. But Tsang Xing instantly overturned Riaz's conjecture. The creator of the experimentation ground is Prince Cicero, not a Lemurian. Lemuria, in the official language of Eternal Kingdom, means grazing. Eternal Kingdom? Riaz opened his mouth and said, "What's that?" "Apologies, Lord Shepherd," Tsang Xing said expressionlessly. "The Lord Shepherd is forbidden from accessing information about Eternal Kingdom. Please forgive me for not being able to explain this to you." What could Riaz do? Tsang Xing was only a projection and didn't have a physical body. "What if it's me?" Luoqiu suddenly said. "If it's me, can you tell me some information about Eternal Kingdom?" Tsang Xing turned to look at Luoqiu. "Apologies, I can't test. The projection of Tsang Xing seemed to be disturbed at this moment. It began to blur and even distort. It even kept repeating the same words. After a while, Tsang Xing's projection was completely distorted and shattered. But soon, a new projection was formed. "The program has been rebooted. I'm Tsang Xing, the train attendant. I'm happy to serve you, Lord Shepherd." Boss Luo shook his head. He didn't have a good solution. This problem was like a GTX 210 being unable to run a AAA game. It seemed that the artificial intelligence system in charge of managing the experimentation ground was of a lower level than the Penglai treasure vault system. Its level was too high. ########PS. The next chapter will be late, 3 to 4 p.m.